I guess the sound's on now, huh?
I think it's dead.
That's all right.
What's
All right,
dead?
I'll use it.
There's too much sound there. So, Susan, where's the control for that? Volume control for that? Okay. All right. Got it? You got it, Dennis? Okay.
No, it showed up.
So apparently we're still limited on our technology here. Hopefully everybody can hear. Can you hear us out there? Yeah. Okay, good. Good. All right, so welcome to, that's a pretty hot sound there. Welcome to Board of Supervisors meeting for February 9th, 2016. Could you please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Did you get through
Okay, you ready there, Susan? All right.
Yep.
All right, so this morning, the board started off with a closed session hearing, or closed session meeting. And there were three. Closed session conference for legal counsel anticipated litigation, significant exposure to litigation pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.9D2. And there was no action taken on that one. Closed section pursuant to Government Code Section 54957.6. Personal matter, conference with negotiator Judy Hawkins, Deputy County Administrative Officer, Human Resources and Risk Management, regarding the Sheriff's Management Unit, SMU, the Calaveras County Public Safety Employees Association, which is CCP-SEA, and Service Employees International Union, SEIU, negotiations. Human Resources Director, there was no action taken. Man, that's pretty hot. And then public employee appointment pursuant to Government Code Section 54957, librarian and building official. Also, no action taken. So this morning, we're going to start off with public comment, and that'll be a half an hour. So any item of interest to the public that is within the subject matter jurisdiction of the board and is not posted on the consent or regular agendas may be addressed during the public comment period. California law prohibits the board from taking action on any matter which is not posted on the agenda, unless it is determined to be an emergency by the Board of Supervisors. If public comment is completed before a 30-minute allotted time period, the board may immediately move to a regular agenda. If public comment is not completed during the allotted time period, it will be continued at the conclusion of the consent agenda in order to provide an opportunity for the remainder of the comments to be heard. So at this time, it's going to look like it's going to be a long day. So I'll give 3 minutes for public comments.
Good morning, Chair Edson and fellow board members. Thank you for the opportunity to speak this morning. I'm Thomas Reeves. I'm your government relations liaison to Pacific Gas and Electric, PG&E. From time to time, I like to come and just give updates on what PG&E is up to. But this morning, I brought with me Richard Yarnell, who is your local vegetation management expert. And I understand that at the last meeting, there were some questions about foresters and PG&E vegetation management certification, whether or not we're fully certified and all that type of thing. So I brought Richard to talk through that just briefly, and of course be available if any questions come up. We'll pass out business cards if we need to, if anybody has questions that can't be answered right now. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, I'm Richard Yarnell. I'm Vegetation Program Manager for Pacific Gas and Electric. The work that we perform, our responsibility is to inspect 115,000 miles of distribution facilities throughout our service territory and 70,000 miles of transmission lines. We do that with a workforce of approximately 600 tree contract crews and 300 utility arborists. All of the arborists are either certified or become certified through the International Society of Arboriculture as certified arborists, and then go on to acquire the certification of a utility specialist. We also use registered professional foresters. Our main responsibility is to ensure public safety and service reliability, and that we're in compliance with Public Resource Code 4293. And then where that mostly applies in an area like this is at no time can any vegetation get closer than 4 foot, and then any tree, dead, dying, or diseased that has the ability of failing and falling into the right-of-way, we have to mitigate that risk. So our inspectors go out, they inspect the trees. They not only use the guidelines by the International Society of Arboriculture for trees affected by a fire, they also use the guidelines by the U.S. Forest Service. So there's a lot of criteria that goes into their training. They have monthly training too, and they have to acquire continuing education credits to maintain that certification. So if there's, if there's any questions, feel free to answer any other questions that you may have.
Thank you.
If you could leave some of your cards or that card up here.
I have to get some more business cards because I just moved my office.
Okay. Okay.
But you can also reach out to Thomas.
Okay, I have Thomas's contact. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks. Yeah, Thomas has been great through this whole deal. Thank you, Thomas.
I know there's also been, just briefly, I know there's also been some concern about some erosion control issues and stuff. And that is something that we're working through. We're in the process right now of, we just did a lot of training with our inspectors to go out and specifically look at every property that we have touched where work has been performed within 25 feet of a water course or a stream. And we'll be going through and implementing whatever erosion control measures need to be done. We'll be hiring a private contractor to come in and perform all that work once we determine what the extent of that is. All right, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Before we go to the next person, just to let you know that if you have something that you'd like to hand to the board, please, we have a deputy sheriff here. You can hand it to the deputy sheriff, and he will pass it on to Karen. Thank you.
Ready?
Yes.
Okay, you guys know who I am. You're Cliff Edson. A little less than a year ago, we were talking online on the Valley Springs Bulletin Board, and at that point, you questioned me on my character and my contribution to the community because I was the one who had the most salient argument against the asphalt plant. And I was the one who posted online Mr. Kearney's connection by donation to the asphalt plant. And I've been harassed. I'm going to ask for another 3 minutes. You interrupt me, I'm going to ask for another 3 minutes. Another 3 minutes, please.
This is for anything that is not related to what is on our agenda today.
And
so the
again,
asphalt plant is on our agenda today.
I understand that, and this is separate from that argument. You guys are, and I want an extra 3 minutes because I now have to answer your question, okay? Because your question here is about the asphalt plant, and what is happening is you guys are having a proposed asphalt plant. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the harassment I have been receiving in the community over the illegal asphalt plant that is at my water source right now. I have been receiving harassment in the community.
You are talking about the asphalt plant, which is on our agenda.
I am talking about the harassment I have been receiving in the community.
You are talking about the asphalt plant.
I get 3 minutes to speak. Can I have 3 minutes to speak?
You can speak to whatever isn't on our agenda.
I will be talking about the harassment I have been receiving from you and Mr. Kearney and proponents of the asphalt plant. I have been getting calls that are harassing me.
We actually do that during
And
the asphalt plant portion of the meeting.
the point being, no, this is because it is an illegal asphalt plant. My water source has been threatened.
I'm
and
asking
I
you one more
have
time to not
I have
talk about what's
claimed-
on the agenda.
And you keep interrupting, and I'm going to have to take another 3 minutes. The sheriff's office, I have gone to the sheriff's office, I have filed a report to have, I have had to have the police have not put a trace on my line to track these phone calls. These phone gentlemen from Chambers.
Behavior is the corporate criminal.
Chair, we need to remind the gallery that this is a chamber
So,
board of supervisors. Thank you, sir.
we will not tolerate insolent behavior. All right? We're here, this is public comment. This is public comment. If it has to do with the asphalt plant, we will have plenty of public comment during the asphalt plant portion of this. All right? So, thank you. Mr. Fry.
Good morning, Chairman Edson and fellow board members of the Board of Supervisors. This morning I placed in front of your chairs a letter regarding Boys State for 2016. As the adjutant of American Legion Post Bill Brenly 102 in Valley Springs, I've addressed a letter that we're looking for funds to fund 6 boys at $330 apiece for Boys State this year. You'll see in the base of the letter some information regarding the history and the boys that went last year. I'd like to once again thank Chairman Edson for the proclamation that was given to all of the boys and girls staters last year. Also, in addition, I'd like to thank Chairman Edson and Supervisor Kearney for the repeated attendance at our American Legion meetings and for your generous contributions. So we need to raise $330 per boy, and we need a total of almost $2,000. So I'm here today to present this to the Board of Supervisors and anybody in the room that would be willing to make a contribution to this really outstanding program. If we get additional funds, we will look around in other American Legion posts in the state of California and send other students in our 3 high schools there. There are many posts that don't send anybody, and this is an incredible program. 4 years ago, we sent a young man to Boys State, and there were about 800 boys there that year. Last year, we had 1,008 boys at Boys State. Anyway, this young man only knew the other 5 Boys Staters from this county. He went there and decided to run for governor. He got 750 votes statewide and became the governor. Came back to our county and decided to apply for a congressional appointment to the U.S. Naval Academy. Got accepted, and he's now completing his 3rd year at the Naval Academy. So that's one indication of what can be done with people that go to Boys State. I would like to make one last comment. Last year, there was a young man from Bret Harte High School, Riley Gorman. I saw him on Saturday morning when all the boys showed up at Sac State. He was just as bewildered as the rest of the boys.
Thank you, Mr. Fry.
Thank you, Mr. Fry.
Come Friday night at the closing ceremonies, he came up to me and he said, Mr. Fry, this is the most incredible experience I've ever had.
Thank you.
I leave you with that.
Thank you.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm Dr. Courtney Virgilio, the cardiologist at Mark Twain Heart Center, and this is Ann Walton, one of our nurses.
Glad you're here.
Thank you, we are too. So February is Heart Month, and so we came to spread a little cheer about heart disease prevention. and tell you a little bit about what we've done across the way there. So we're very proud to say that we've accomplished a full non-invasive diagnostic facility, including echo, 6 different types of stress testing, vascular capabilities to check for aneurysms, check for blockage elsewhere. We have a comprehensive cardiac rehab program, and next week is Cardiac Rehab Awareness Week. So cardiac rehab is supervised exercise. And so after you've had a heart attack or bypass surgery or valve surgery, or if you have certain types of heart failure, you could be eligible to participate, where you're supervised by myself on site. We have cardiac nurses who are intimately involved with the patients, monitoring their heart rate, their rhythm, their blood pressure, giving education about heart disease.
Could I interrupt you for a moment? Folks, I can't understand what she's saying. If you're going to have a conversation, could you take it out in the lobby? I appreciate that. Thank you. I'm sorry.
That's okay. We're happy to be here. So it's Heart Disease Awareness Month, February, and next week is Cardiac Rehab Awareness Week. So we brought a couple flyers, a couple handouts about what we're doing across the way to benefit the community, so people don't have to travel for their health care. Thank you.
That's really great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And we have these gifts for you guys, so we'll hand them this way. Yep.
Nice.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Thanks for being here.
Joe Kelly from the abandoned area of District 1. Last meeting, Mr. Edson, you made a comment that I didn't do my homework when I bought my property during the natural hazards plan you folks adopted. I have in my hand here a document from Calaveras County Building Department, floodplain investigation request. The APN number is my APN number. The date is 9/7/05, before I bought my property. The address is the property on Balenquick, and it says, not in a flooding zone, no special requirements necessary. So who was I supposed to go to when I went to the county? Let me express to you also. 1988, FEMA came, did a study. 1990, the FEMA report, Cosgrove Creek, San Antonio Creek. Calaveras County participation in the NFIP, National Flood Insurance Program, 17 years, and they didn't know Nassau Creek flooded, whether it be natural or unnatural. Now, I want to go into an issue of why I am saying now the abandoned area of District 1. Mr. Edson, at one of your night meetings last year, you made statements, investing lives, time here, and everything they own here. I am representing the people that actually work here and try to live here and invested their whole life here. That's important to me. And you also made a comment, never ask anyone to leave. Mr. Edson, you haven't personally asked me to leave, but you sure make it hard not to, and not to get your thoughts out properly. So with that, I did want to do one thing. I did want to give you a thank you. I've gone through 2 districts, 3 different supervisors, you're the last one, and I want to say thank you. You did come out to my property. You did witness, look at all the pictures I had and walk the property. You're the only one that did. I thank you for that. It's more than Tofinelli will ever get, or Tryon. Thank you very much.
Good morning, Bill McManus from the Calaveras Project. It's going to be a wild meeting, I can see, but in any case, I'm glad there's a lot of people here because I have a public apology I'd like to make. Some 2 years ago, I started getting interested in the pot issue in Calaveras County and became either devoted to it or addicted to it. I can't stop. I can't stop what I'm doing. During that time, I wrongly assumed that citizens of District 2 were part of a monolithic group of people, and that was ground zero for the pot industry. Besides, people in the other 4 districts were after me to help them with problems in each individual district. I didn't reach out to the people in District 2. For some reason, that seems to have changed. Without me reaching out, I'm now receiving phone calls and emails from throughout District 2. People who feel abandoned, people who don't want to be thrown into the collective stereotype of what's going on in District 2. One in particular was a fellow that, after suffering the devastation of the fire, getting his property cleaned up, wanting to rebuild, keep his business here, keep his family in District 2. Of course, he wasn't getting any response from his supervisor. Had to take a pause at whether or not he should actually start the rebuild of his house, because the vultures from outside Calaveras County have descended on District 2, and they're buying up property left and right for more pot grows. And he now finds himself questioning himself whether he should put his family, himself, his business, and his investment at risk if that's the way it's going to be in Calaveras County and in District 2. The word's slowly creeping around. Like I said, I haven't reached out, so it's word of mouth. I'm getting lots of calls like that. So I want to apologize to the people in District 2 that I threw into that initial category. I was wrong. Those people need help. They've been devastated once by a fire, and now they're going to be devastated again by the influx of illegal marijuana growing. And I would also like to thank County Council's office for coming up with such a hideous pot ordinance that has absolutely lit a fire under everybody. They all want to know, how could this be in this county? So I look forward to the discussion on the ordinance, and I think there'll be a lot more involvement in it. And I'm here representing people who've called me and said, please deliver our message. A lot of them are afraid to be here. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Mr. McManus.
I'm Will Moore. I live in Rancho Calaveras in District 5, and as I read the agenda, the issue regarding the asphalt plant is limited strictly to the code 1742, and I have remarks to make about the asphalt plant that go beyond that limitation. So, can I do it now, or do I have to wait?
No, he can do it.
You can do it now?
Greeting, Honorable Board of Supervisors. The Constitution of the United States of America contains a general welfare clause in it. You all took an oath to uphold the Constitution when you accepted the responsibilities of your office. We, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, and promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings for liberty, for posterity, do establish this Constitution of the United States. Okay, attached here is a stuffer ad that appeared in the Calaveras Enterprise and the Union Democrat. It's a paid advertisement by the proponents of the asphalt plant. The ad is entitled, "Get the Facts About the Proposed Hogan Quarry Asphalt Plant. Some of the facts are lies." The flyer says in part, fiction. It defines as fiction the argument that the plant will increase traffic from the quarry. It says, for every new asphalt...
So you're moving into the subject matter of
traffic and not the environment.
It's still a part of what's in the agenda packet on our agenda item.
Well, that's what I asked at the beginning of this.
No, that was a little different, what you're commenting on now. So if you don't mind, it would be, you'll have time to bring this up during the agenda item, and that would be the appropriate time to do this.
That was what I asked.
Good morning, folks. Isn't it a beautiful morning? My name is Peter Race from Jenny Lynn. First of all, I want to comment and want to congratulate you folks. I tried to download the agenda, today's agenda. I thought my computer was broken. But anyway, I got it done. A couple of minor items that affecting everybody in this room. One of them is Northern California, Planned Parenthood is under investigation, and I'm sure no way your staff have any way at all helped the folks get their Lamborghini. But, because it's your name on the bottom, that's one thing. Another thing, I want to disclaim that any formal matter, what I'm going to be talking about in a second, is reflect to the grunts, the guys who went out there and fought the fire. But the administrator of CAL FIRE, he's got busted and indicted. I don't know if it's the same gentleman who had a little problem with the little loosey-goosey money they had before the $150, but the CAL FIRE also lost the case in California. So pretty soon you're going to be able to have the information, get your $150 or whatever you got stuck and screwed over. You should be able to get it back. But it should be a fun day. Democracy in work. Let's get to it. It's about time to rumble. Thank you, folks.
Good morning, Bonnie Newman from Double Springs. I moved to Calaveras County in the early 70s, and my next-door neighbors had been living here for almost 50 years already. And they told me, well, hon, you're going to have to get used to us. We're about 20 years behind where you come from. So I've always had a concept that maybe we're a little behind times. Now, I notice on the agenda they're going to be, you all are going to be considering a resource conservation district, and we're one of the last counties in the state to form one, a little behind times. A few years back, there was an organization called Community Action Agency. It started, I think, in the 70s. Amador and Tuolumne formed a Community Action Agency, but not Calaveras. And they formed one about 20 years later. That's about 20 years behind times. But I'd like to take you back even further, back in the 60s when Yosemite College District was going to build a campus in the Mother Lode. They looked at all the sites, all the counties, and the place they selected was San Andreas. They were going to build a college campus behind or next to or above the high school right here in San Andreas. But our Board of Supervisors would not allow them because they did not want a bunch of goddamn hippies hanging around. Since that time, we have not had a very welcome attitude towards young people. We wonder where the young people going. Well, they're not staying here. All those goddamn hippies went and got their 2-year degree. They went on to a 4-year college. They became accountants, counselors, teachers, firefighters. But we don't want those kind of people around here. So I'm just trying to remind you, sometimes the actions our Board of Supervisors takes are 20 years behind the time because they have some kind of block towards anything progressive, like they don't like the word sustainable. Come on, people. We are really 20 years behind the times. It's time to step up. We're looking to you as our leaders. We want to see leadership. We don't want to see you come unprepared to meetings, having to postpone action. We don't want to see you harassing staff because you don't know the answers. They give you the answers. The problem is you want to harangue them until they change their answers. They're too professional to change their answers. They give you what the code is, they give you the regulation, and in your mass denial, you don't want to listen. Thank you.
Thanks. I just had a question about the Butte Fire dump trucks there on 26. I read they were going to put a transfer station in Toyon Circle so they can cut back the amount of trucks, but I drive that every day and it doesn't seem like it's cut back at all. You just answer whenever,
I know it's on the agenda later on today, Butte Fire update, but Jason Bates here with Calaveras County Director of Environmental Health. The county did approve it, but the transfer station has not been approved by Cal Recycle, so we've been running into issues with that approval by Cal Recycle. So at this point in time, it's there's no transfer station. So, okay.
I just heard about it.
Yeah.
But it hasn't cut back. It doesn't seem like it.
No. So we're looking at. I've actually this past week worked with Public Works. So.
Thank you, Jason. Any other public comments? Okay. So we'll move on to our consent agenda. Regular agenda, sorry. So our regular agenda, first item is Planning 2015-82, appeal of the Planning Commission's determination that based on substantial evidence, the use of hazardous materials at the proposed asphalt plant at Hogan Quarry does not rise to a level that may be significant impact on the environment pursuant to section 17.042.035 of County Code. And just before we start this, there's a definite process that we're going to use for the once I open the public hearing, and here's the process. So staff is going to get 15 minutes to.
That's staff report is.
Yeah. Staff?
Yeah, the staff report is on time. It's 15 minutes.
All right. Okay. So staff report is 15 minutes. Then next one will be the appellants. They'll be able to comment for 10 minutes each, and there are 6 at this point. What's that?
It's staff reports. It's staff report. The appellants are 15 minutes each. The applicants 15 minutes each. The staff report doesn't have any time. It's just the appellants that
Okay.
less than this.
All right. So we have a staff report. All right, so the staff report, they're going to just lay it all out for everybody according to staff. Then the appellants, once the hearing opens, will have 10 minutes each. 15 minutes each, sorry, it's on the wrong line. The applicant will have 15 minutes. Members of the public will have 3. The appellant, and I'll tell you something about that, I'm going to try to keep it to where we aren't repeating over and over the same exact thing, because once we've heard it at least 3 times, we've already heard it. So if you could keep that to a minimum, that would be very much appreciated. Then there is the appellant rebuttal. That's 10 minutes each. Then the applicant rebuttal, 10 minutes. And then we'll close with the staff summation. So we'll ask the staff if they have anything that they want to talk about based on everything that they've heard during that period of time. And then we will close the hearing. And then at that point, after we close the hearing, we'll have board discussion, and then we'll take action. Okay? So, right now we'd like to hear staff's report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Peter Maurer, Planning Director. With me today is Jason Baitzer, the Director of the Environmental Management Agency, and Corey Loy from the Air Pollution Control District.
I'm pretty sure you have to speak a little closer to the mic there.
Okay. So as you stated before you is are 6 appeals of the Planning Commission action of December 17th, where they the Commission overturned the determination by the Environmental Management Director, acting as the County Health Officer, finding that the Planning Commission found that there is not a significant effect on the environment for the purposes of Section 17.42.035 of the County Code. And I'll get into that detail in a moment. And therefore, a conditional use permit would not be required for the proposed asphalt plant at Hogan Quarry. So I said there are 6 separate appeals. They've been filed by Janice Bassett, Brooke Estes, Dr. Benedicto Estoesta, Terry and Richard Henderson, Laura Most, and Joyce Teckel, representing myvalleysprings.com. The appeals seek to overturn the Planning Commission's determination that the proposed asphalt plant at Hogan Quarry will not have a significant effect on the environment, pursuant to Section 17.42.035. Additional points of appeal are that the Planning Commission did not have the authority to hear the original appeal filed by Ford Construction and CB Asphalt of the environmental health officer's original decision, that it may have a significant effect, and also that the commission failed to address CEQA. So as a bit of background, in May, I found that at the request of For Construction, a proposal to place an asphalt plant, to operate an asphalt plant at the quarry. I found that our code would allow that as a use permitted by right in the M2 zone. That was appealed to the Planning Commission. Ultimately, the Board of Supervisors upheld that determination. In July, the health officer, however, found that the proposed plant may have a significant effect on the environment, and the code requires a conditional use permit regardless of the prior determination. That was appealed, and in August, a hearing was held before the Planning Commission. There were a number of decisions that the Commission made at that hearing that was finalized on the December 17th hearing. First was that the change in use triggered the review under Section 035, and that section requires that if there's a change of use, a building permit or a business license, that the health officers to review the potential list of hazardous substances to find whether or not the method of use, the quantity, the type, method of use, or quantity of hazardous substances are such that they may have a significant effect on the environment. And that is the key issue that is before us today, whether or not those substances have a potential for a significant effect on the environment through the type, method of use, or the quantities. Information was provided to the health officer to make that determination, and he reviewed that information initially and made those findings. Other findings made by the Commission was that Section 035 was not unconstitutionally vague, that was sufficient to provide direction to the county staff in order to make that decision. That extra information should be used in making that determination, however. It's not just a matter of a per se review of are there substances, and if so, that there needs to be a conditional use permit. It's whether, again, the method of use, type, and quantities. And you can look at other information as far as how those quantities are controlled. And that was the direction the Planning Commission gave the health officer vis-a-vis those substances. So they directed staff to review other rules and regulations in place, both locally as well as at state and federal level, to be applied to that. Because of that, we needed additional information from the applicant to look at that, and the action was continued at that August hearing. It was then continued several times as we were waiting to receive the information and studies were done, and finally it was heard on December 10th, with final action being taken on the 17th. At that action, the Planning Commission found, based on the evidence that they had before them, that the asphalt plant will not have a significant effect on the environment, pursuant to Section 1742.035. The other actions taken along the way was that the applicant applied for an authority to construct, a permit from the Air Pollution Control District to operate an asphalt plant. It was determined that that permit is a discretionary permit and subject to CEQA. We have not gone beyond that initial finding. That was appealed and also upheld by the Planning Commission that, yes, indeed, that is a discretionary permit. And CEQA will be done at the time that permit is processed. It was also determined that the review under Section 035, which is simply a determination whether or not a conditional use permit is required or not, is not a project under CEQA. So that review is, the decision that's being made today, that was made by the Commission, that was previously made by the health officer, is not a project as defined by CEQA. But that prior to the issuance of the authority to construct, a CEQA review will be done and a document prepared. The other issues that have been raised in the appeals was, one, whether or not the Planning Commission had the authority to hear the initial appeal. Frankly, that was never raised before and is not properly before you today. Regardless of that fact, all it did was provide additional hearings, so there's no prejudice to the public, to the appellants, to the applicants as far as having the Planning Commission hear that action. But the fact that they did not raise it until after the Planning Commission hearing, under our code, you have to bring up any issues that you want to appeal at the previous hearing. You can't appeal something after the fact. And again, and the other issue is whether or not CEQA has been adequately addressed with the Planning Commission's action. And as we determined previously, this decision is not subject to CEQA. CEQA will be addressed in the future when we process the authority to construct. Also raised was the Planning Commission's authority to direct the health officer. The Planning Commission has the authority to interpret the county code, particularly the zoning ordinance. 1742-035 is in the zoning code. They are charged with that duty to interpret that, along with planning staff, and it was an appropriate direction based on their interpretation of what the code says and what the crafters of the ordinance, what they believe was the intent of the board when that ordinance was adopted back in the 80s. We've received a lot of information, somewhere 900 pages of documentation before you, as well as a lot of last-minute documents that have come in just even last night. Some of the things that have been raised, such as jobs, it's irrelevant. The only thing before you today is whether or not the information you have before you, the evidence in the record and provided to you in testimony today, supports a finding one way or the other that there may or may not have a significant effect on the environment pursuant to 035. There's some discussion about may versus will. The code says may. That's the operative word that we are looking at. It's a fairly low threshold, but there's sufficient evidence, whatever way you feel the evidence supports, that's what you should base your finding on. Another issue is whether or not significant is the same as any effect. And I think that some of the issues that have been raised as far as how you should judge significant, you have to look at carefully. Significant doesn't mean that any effect means you have to have a finding that there would be one. The issue about whiteout. Yes, whiteout has some toxic chemicals in it, but it's a matter of the quantity. If you looked at any time that there would be any hazardous substance required a conditional use permit would lead to an absurd result. So you have to look at it in the case of how much there is, how it's being used, and the type of substance that's there. And that, I think, is the gist of where we're at today, is it significant? So, what you need to consider today, again, based on the record before you and what will be presented to you in public testimony, is does the record support that either a finding that there is sufficient evidence that there may be a significant effect on the environment from the type, method of use, or quantity of hazardous substances used or produced at the asphalt plant, such that there may be a significant effect on the environment. If you find, based on that evidence, that there is not sufficient evidence to support that finding, then you should deny the appeals, uphold the Planning Commission's decision, and adopt the resolution that is on page 11 of your packet. However, if you find that the evidence supports a finding that there may be a significant effect, then you should approve the appeals, overturn the Planning Commission's decision, and adopt the alternate resolution, which is on page 922 of your packet. That's all I have. Just try to frame the picture before today. If you have any questions about us, I don't know if Jason or Chris has anything they want to add. to this initial presentation, and indicating that they don't. So if you have any questions for us, otherwise we turn it over to the appellants.
Okay. Any questions from the board?
Not at this time.
No? Okay. Okay, at this time we'll open up the public hearing, a public appeals hearing. And the appellants will have a few minutes to present. So we're now into the public appeals hearing.
Do you want to call it first?
Sure.
I thought we were to appear in alphabetical order, but I don't have a problem with that. I've got to get my glasses on so I can read. My name is Laura Most, and I reside at 4114 Ferris Drive in Rancho Calaveras. My deceased husband and myself moved in the spring of 2000 from Tracy, California, to get away from the smog and fog and to move to a smaller community. Here are some of my concerns about the proposed asphalt plant at Hogan Dam Quarry. The majority of the planning commissioners voted against the recommendation of the Environmental Health Director, staff, and the County Health Director, Dr. Kaleda, who have recommended to the county that we need an environmental impact report and a conditional use permit for the proposed asphalt plant. We, the residents, were not notified. We found out about the proposed asphalt plant in a paid flyer which appeared in the Valley Springs News. Calaveras County does not have an updated general plan. Pat Pereira filed a protest letter for the appeal dated June 2nd, 2015. She so states in issue 1, there is not an adopted revised general plan. Approval of the asphalt plant would have been approved under the existing general plan, which is inadequate. She enclosed a case of summary litigation filed by the Neighborhood Action Group vs. the County of Calaveras County Court of Appeals in 1984. And I have some other things, but anyway, there is an inadequate general plan. Calaveras County has been working on a general plan since 2007. Thousands of dollars of taxpayers' money with still no updated general plan. I have an enclosed article, Enterprise Record dated February 5th, 2016. Scrap general plan unlikely to see light of day. Thomas Infosino, who is a land use attorney, letter to the Calaveras County Planning Commission dated June 24th, 2015. Calaveras Planning Coalition letter, page 7 of the CPC letter. The project as a whole needs a CEQA report. A valid general plan is needed to support approval of the asphalt plant. I'm concerned about the increased traffic on Silver Rapids Road, right down through a residential neighborhood with children playing in their yards and inhaling asphalt fumes. Hogan Dam Road, where the proposed asphalt plant is from 800 feet to Calaveras River and 2,000 feet to CCWD water treatment. Should our water supply become contaminated, we would be at severe health risk. Do we want to be another Flint, Michigan? Our property values would plummet and our property taxes would decrease, which in turn would be less revenue for the county. A protest petition for the proposed asphalt plant was turned in by Terry Henderson to the Calaveras County Board of Supervisors and the Calaveras Planning Commission with 958 signatures. Most of those signatures were from Rancho Calaveras and La Cantera subdivisions. Should this recommendation be approved as the Calaveras Planning Commission are recommending, it is a potential for 193 asphalt plants or other like businesses to put in with any kind of environmental review. Take a look at 1 and 2 parcels, M1 and M2 parcels. Many are located on Pool Station Road and 9 properties on George Reed Drive in San Andres. 23 properties on M1 and M2 are located in Valley Springs. In my appeal, I had all those 193. Thomas Infosino's statements in his letter dated June 24, 2015, so states, we disagree that the asphalt plant should be allowed in the M1 and M2 zones by right without the benefit of a use permit. Health issues. Dr. Estoes' letter dated August 10, 2015 to the Calaveras Board of Supervisors explaining his health concerns of his patients and the rest of the community. In closing, I would like to read a letter that my late husband, Donald Most, wrote to the Planning Commissioners dated August 20, 2015, 18 days before he passed away. Don was told by Dr. Jokic, a pulmonary doctor, in August of 2013, that the reason he had his respiratory health problems were because of all the chemicals that he had inhaled with his 50 years of working in the building industry. This is Don's letter. My name is Don Most. I live at 4114 Ferris Drive in Rancho Calaveras subdivision. I have been in construction for 60 years with the last 28 years of general building contractor. I keep hearing from the Planning Commission who is failing to keep our environment and our community safe from hazardous and toxic pollution. For 60 years, I've been told by our government that our workplace environment is safe and well within the environmental limits set by the powers that to be, the EPA. Is our environment is safe within the limits set by our government? Why, for the last 25 years, has the American taxpayer been charged hundreds of billions of dollars to clean up an environmental deemed safe by the same government? That is now being declared toxic and needs to be cleaned up. In spite of the entire safeguard to ensure our environment remains safe, who picks up the cost of these environmental disasters? In most disasters, the American taxpayer is charged for the cleanup. For 60 years, my government has told me that everything under control and our workplace and communities are within the safe limits set by our government. I am 76 years old, and because of my health environment set by our government, I have several health issues. Because of our toxic workplace, I have developed severe lung and respiratory problems. I am now on oxygen 24/7 and struggling to get enough oxygen to prolong life. I hope you people who preach we have enough environment safeguards will understand why I don't believe you. If you want a window into the future, look at the past history. Each business they want to operate with toxic wastes needs to have an EIR, Environmental Impact Report, so that the people and community will know and understand how these businesses will affect their lives going forward. Issues need to be mitigated before a project goes online, not after. A conditional use permit needs to be required so the county will have some control over regulating the businesses. My issues with the Planning Commission. The Planning Commissioners are not elected by the people of Calaveras County. We elect the Board of Supervisors who appoints a person to sit on the Planning Commission. Since they are appointed and not elected, they are not obligated to make decisions that are best for the people and our communities. They have authority to make decisions which affects our community and its people. The present Planning Commissioners are voting to fast-track projects without gathering the necessary facts to make a wise decision. Their job is to gather evidence to make a determination whether the project should be accepted or rejected. By this 4-to-1 vote, yes, they shifted the responsibility and liability to the Calaveras County taxpayer with no oversight or condition against Ford Construction, Inc. and CB Asphalt, Inc. The final decision should be made by the Board of Supervisors who are elected by the people and can be held accountable for their actions. The Ford Construction, Inc. and CB Asphalt, Inc. plant is a perfect example of what happens when you fast-track a project without notifying the people who live by the project area. By a 4-to-1 decision, the Planning Commissioners voted to let Ford Construction, Inc. and CB Asphalt, Inc. to proceed without a conditional use permit or an EIR. If appeals had not been filed, we would have an asphalt plant operating at the Hogan Dam Quarry without a conditional use permit or an EIR. The Board of Supervisors would have accepted the Planning Commissioner's decision and approved the asphalt plant. Don Lee Most.
Thank you, Madam. Thank you.
I realize that this is a big group, so please share the burden of 1 copy for every 3 or 4 people with you. My name is Dr. Estevesta. And with me today is Dr. Dean Caleta, who is...
Dr. E?
Yes?
Could you address the board, please?
Oh, I'm sorry. Good morning, Mr. Chair and Vice Chair, and to the Board of Supervisors, and to my fellow people from Calaveras County. So...
Can I get the name spelling one time, please? Spell your last name for me, Doctor.
Estoesta, Esto Esta.
D-O-E-S-A?
It's in the,
It says it here. Okay.
I'm a practicing physician for Calaveras County for 16 years. I was the medical director for Mark Twain St. Joseph Hospital, and I was in academic medicine for 16 years with Palo Alto Medical Foundation and Stanford University. With me today is Dr. Kaleta. Him and I are one of the few fellows of the American Academy of Family Practice practicing in Calaveras County. And today I prepared a simple lecture for everyone because I think physicians are educators on health. But today you will learn a little bit of organic chemistry, pathology, and at the same time, internal medicine. And I have 4 pages with you to read. And for these physicians or health professionals, I gave you 4 bibliographies. These are all premier textbooks in medicine. And mostly are textbooks for medical schools and sources of board questions for the USMLE Part 1 and Part 2 before they take the board exams. And then on the 3rd page are common readings for all of us here. And I would like to emphasize the Toxic Town that was printed by U.S. National Library of Medicine. And at the same time, Hot Mix Asphalt Emission Fact Sheets. And these are all printed for you to read at your time. I heard today this page, which is printed to all our people here, and there are 2,000 homes that are within 1 to 2 miles from the proposed asphalt plant. And there are also 2 elementary schools in Valley Springs. There's General End with about 700 students, and Valley Springs Elementary School with 600 students just within the vicinity of the proposed plant. And within 5 miles is your Toyon, which has another 1,200 students all in all. And these are the very children, grandchildren, nephews, and nieces that we care about. But today in this room, nearly all of us are adults. All of us are 50 to 60-year-old and over, and we have one thing to talk about our health today. We don't have the health cardiac reserve and lung reserve that is compared to the normal young adolescent. We will be the very first victims of hazardous materials and pollutants that are emitted through the air with these asphalt plants. And on your first page there are 2 types of emissions for asphalts. One is your smokestack emissions, and these are the emitted toxic compounds as a byproduct of final manufacturing and synthesis of this organic waste from petroleum products. And these are in large quantities, together with what we call elusive or fugitive emissions. And fugitive emissions are toxic compounds similar to compounds that are released in smokestack, but these are when asphalt products are moved around in trucks or from conveyor belts and at the same time stored in stockpiles. Now, if there are 150 trucks moving in around Highway 26, either from Silver Rapids and Vista del Lago, and they're running at 25 miles per hour. Within 1 hour, nearly entire Calaveras County is enveloped with toxic fumes. Within 2 hours, it reaches Stockton, and within 4 hours, it reaches Silicon Valley and the Bay Area. And if you imagine the Butte fire that we have about a few months ago, as far as 180 miles distance, our dust and smoke and carbon blanketed homes in the Silicon Valley. And we're talking about 20 to 30 miles per hour movement of air. Now here are the contaminants of concern from asphalt plants. And I did not make this up. These are all coming from the Division of Air Quality and Office of Air Quality Planning and Standards. And these are all referenced with proper bibliography in medical journals. So today you will be young physicians in training like me. Okay? Now there are a lot of toxins that we need to talk about that this paper showed by Asphalt Committee showed that all what I'm talking about are just fiction. Now you know that there will be facts after these 10 minutes of talk. Okay? What I worry about toxic pollution are a group of polyhydrogenated carbons, and these are all toxic gases that sometimes you could not feel, but you could only breathe. And oftentimes they may be odorless. But in large quantities, especially the hydrogen sulfide that becomes sulfur dioxide and sulfuric acid, these are sometimes rotten egg in terms of smell if you are within half a mile to 1 mile. But because it stays in the air for 18 hours, by the time it reaches your home in Copperopolis, it will now be sulfur dioxide and sulfuric acid. And if you happen to have COPD, emphysema, bronchitis, much more you are the person who is morbidly obese with very low lung reserve, you'll be the first one to go. Shortness of breath, difficulty breathing, coughing, and wheezing. And if you're already on handheld nebulizing therapy every 2 to every 4 hours, beware, you could no longer leave your own home. Okay? Then comes benzene. Benzene is a true carcinogen in the body. This is what pediatric cancer specialists and hematologists taught us in medical school. Benzene could cause cancer of the lungs, cancer of the stomach, cancer of the skin. Okay? Once it is inhaled at high concentration, little boys, little girls will develop aplastic anemia. So your grandchildren who are 4 years old playing outside their homes or playing soccer in their ball field games, when they smell this in large quantity, will diminish bone marrow development. Your white blood cell, your red blood cell, and your platelet will go low. They will bleed, and they will bleed to death. And they will have infection because their white blood cell count could not fight anything that the bone marrow could make. And the red blood cells are so thinned out, they basically need blood transfusion almost on an every 2-week to every 3-week basis. Luckily, okay, if these are contained, you have some ways to contain them. But if they are emitted into the air, all of us will breathe the same air. Even though your air is only moving 2 miles per hour, just like a person farting on the other side of the corner in 2 minutes, is more volume. We basically concentrate the entire room. Okay? How about tons of toxic materials emitted into the air by 2 ways, stockpile and fugitive emissions. Okay? This will blanket the entire Calaveras County until it becomes a toxic town. Now take a look at benzene. Beware for pregnant mothers, because benzene will go into the placenta, and here comes your babies and your fetuses. Malformed babies, babies with microcephaly, babies with congenital malformations of the ovary, of the kidney, of the uterus, and that's what you will have for great-grandchildren to come. And if you are 19-year-old to 45-year-old having new family, you will develop infertility because your ovaries and your sperm and your testicles will now be diminished in terms of biochemical function because of those toxins. Formaldehyde, this is the worst for COPD patients. The moment you inhale formaldehyde, you cannot breathe. Formaldehyde is so toxic that in patients with sinusitis, bronchitis, pneumonia, it is worse than having been contained in a restroom that was not flushed for 2 hours. Okay? That's what formaldehyde does. And for kids who are playing in your own backyard, when they inhale chromium, nasal bleeding is the most common presentation, followed by ulceration of the nose, septum, esophagus, bronchus, and lung. Okay? You have not seen the worst, and do not wait for the worst until one of our loved ones become victims of toxic town. Cadmium is the same way. Together with arsenic, these are very toxic chemicals and heavy metals that could cause mental retardation, poor IQ, attention deficit, poor memory, and kids who could not learn in school. They might not be able to simplify things in mathematics or do a simple memory in biology or chemistry. Is this the kids that we want to have? Think of it. This is not just about jobs. This is our health, and our health is our wealth.
I'm Janice Bassett from Valley Springs. What I've been observing since this past spring is a county government that's out of control. And I say this based on the letter, the email that Mr. Kearney sent to Peter Maurer, asking, please, just get the people working, and let's avoid a lengthy review, because it's already been done. Now, Mr. Kearney, I want to ask you, where is the review that has already been done? Where is it? I'm asking you a question. I'm asking you a question.
This is your time to present your appealing comments.
Okay. So I don't know if Mr. Kearney actually looked for a review or if Mr. Maurer looked for a review when he was told by Mr. Kearney that one had already been done. Back in August, Mr. Edson admonished the proponents because they didn't reach out to the community first before they put an asphalt plant in their neighborhood. But Mr. Kearney or Mr. Edson took no responsibility or made no acknowledgement of the missteps that our own county government made. And then, after he admonished the proponents, he proceeded to advocate that the board vote to approve the asphalt plant based on a ministerial process that does not even exist in our county. Only Mr. Oliveira voted for that because at the very last moment, the rest of them saw the light, but Mr. Oliveira remained in the dark. Those two actions, the email and the lack of curiosity as to about this review that had already been done, and then the close shave that our county had by almost approving an asphalt plant based on a process that doesn't even exist, clearly demonstrates that our county government, or at least many of them, are invested in having a predetermined outcome. I say that, and it is supported also by Mr. Wooster's proclamation or protestation on August 13th that he sure didn't want to throw this project into the Sequa swamp. I also want to complain mightily about the disrespect our Planning Commission showed to our environmental health officer. They accused him of living in a closet. Now, Mr. Edson, I have heard you praise Mr. Bateser's work on the Butte fire recovery. I'm sure you don't believe that Mr. Bateser has been living in a closet. Now, I challenge the December 17th Planning Commission resolution finding that the use of hazardous substances at the asphalt plant proposed to be operated at the Hogan Quarry will not have a significant effect on the environment. Because of that determination, a conditional use permit is not required pursuant to Calaveras County Section Code 17.42.035. The challenges are based on the following. The Planning Commission declares in the heading of its resolution a resolution finding the use of hazardous substances at the asphalt plant proposed to be operated at the Hogan Quarry will not have a significant effect on the environment, and because of that determination, a conditional use permit is not required pursuant to Calaveras County Section 17.42.035. This declaration presumes the ability of the Planning Commission to see into the future and deny all possibility of the potential for the types, quantities, and method of use of the hazardous materials to have a significant effect on the environment. On page 3, the resolution states the Planning Commission does not believe that the intended result of 17.42.035 is to require a CUP when the chance of a significant impact on the environment is as remote as the commission finds it to be under these facts. The phrases "will not" in the opening paragraph and "not likely to" and "remote chance" on page 3 are inconsistent. All aspects of potential impacts, including the safety of the air and water for thousands of people, are at stake. All precautions and mitigations must be considered. Thousands of people. Thousands of people. The Planning Commission does not state how it came to its belief of the intended result of County Code 17.42.035 and focuses only on accidents or mechanical mishaps, while the testimony of the Environmental Health Director and the staff report consider potentially significant impacts during the course of normal operations. The language of the code, as admitted by the Planning Commission on page 2 of its own resolution, states that analysis of legislative history is required to assist in its interpretation of the drafter's intent. No such analysis was cited to support their belief. It's a belief. Who knows where they got this belief? They invented it. In fact, the only legislative history referred to in the resolution given as evidence actually contradicts the Planning Commission's belief. As it states, the language and legislative history of 17.42.035 evidence a policy decision by the Board of Supervisors to require otherwise permitted uses in industrial zones to obtain conditional use permits in those circumstances where materials or substances involved with the proposed use have the potential to significantly affect the environment. The Board of Supervisors lawfully implemented this policy by assigning its environmental health officer, whose routine duties include assessment and mitigation of risk pertaining to hazardous materials in the county, the task of reviewing a project proponent's proposed use of hazardous materials in industrial zones and determining whether this use involves a potentially significant effect on the environment. In other words, the task of determining when to impose 17.42.035 is not given to the Planning Commission, but to the Environmental Health Officer. That's the legislative history they cite in their own resolution. The legislative language in evidence gives direction to the Planning Commission to only consider whether or not the type, quantity, and method of use of hazardous materials have the potential, the ability to have a significant effect on the environment. The Planning Commission's findings are disproved in its own resolution. Thank you.
Good morning, my name is Sharon Armano, I live in San Andreas. I've been following this issue since it got started, and as it goes on, something has come to mind.
Sorry, ma'am?
Yes.
You're not an appellant. So this is not public comment yet. Sorry.
All right.
So
I just want to say, can you say Flint, Michigan? That's all I have to say.
We're doing appellants right now.
My name is Terry Henderson. This letter I'm going to read is, I wrote it down so I kind of stay on track, is our public response to our appeal that was filed by my husband Richard Henderson and myself, Terry Henderson, to the Board of Supervisors. This will be presented at the appeal hearing of the Planning Commission decision that hazardous materials used at the Hogan Quarry will not have a significant effect on the environment, and a conditional use permit is not required for the proposed asphalt plant at the Hogan Quarry, resolution number 2015-019. Richard will not be able to attend the hearing today. I will be presenting on our behalf. At the time I typed this up, he was going to be at work, but he woke up sick this morning, so anyway, make that correction. As many who have concerns are also not able to make the meetings because of work. So there's a lot of people, I'm sure, that have concerns but have to work, and that's the way life is. Richard and I bought our home in May of 1994. We have a good relationships with the rock quarry, and at times bought rock from the Hogan Rock Quarry to reinforce our driveway prior to putting in a concrete driveway. Our house sits up on a hill. I note this fact just to prove a point. One of the arguments of the proponents of the change of use for the asphalt plant have said all runoff water will be contained to a pit. They must not have much knowledge of the nature of a rock hill. I happen to live on one. Water that seeps through the cracks continues to seep down into the bottom of our driveway for weeks after a good rainstorm. The evidence of this is water on the roadway on Laurent Lane. I do not believe the type of rock would be much different from the rock quarry, since we are less than 1 mile from the quarry. The seepage of water can and will eventually find its way into the Calaveras River. As most of us are now aware, the Calaveras River is a source of water for not only most of the Rancho Calaveras area, but parts of Valley Springs, Gold Creek, and La Quintana residents. Water is a necessity of life. If our water is contaminated by the use of hazardous materials to be added to the rock quarry and production of hot mix asphalt, it will be a major catastrophe for Calaveras County. The water source in the Calaveras River is only rainwater. We do not have the luxury of additional snow runoff that other California rivers so much depend upon. According to the Planning Commission staff report hearing dated December 10th, 2015, project number 2015-029, an appeal filed by Ford Construction CB Asphalt of the Environmental Management Agency's determination that installation and operation of the hot mix asphalt plant Hogan Quarry, 3650 Hogan Dam Road, Valley Springs, APN 050-003-001, will involve the use of hazardous materials that may have a significant effect on the environment, and the planning director's determination that the findings by the health officer requires a conditional use permit pursuant to Calaveras County Code Section 1742035. The report cites that approximately 521 residents are within 1 mile of the proposed project location. My husband and I are included in that number. This report states residences, not people, not the number of people. The number could be double, triple that amount, or even more in that 1 mile boundary. It also states to get to the rock quarry, you have to travel 1.6 miles through a residential neighborhood. It also documents that CCWD's intake for the Genuine Water Treatment Facility is approximately 2,000 feet from the proposed asphalt plant and processes 3 to 5 million gallons of drinking water per day and supplies drinking water to over 10,000 residents. Silver Rapids Road to be used was not always an access to the rock quarry. I've lived here since birth. This was grazing land until a land developer came in the late 1960s, early 70s to subdivide the parcel for a housing community. At this time, the rock quarry was no longer being used to harvest rock, since its main purpose was to construct the new Hogan Dam, an increase that allows much larger water capacity, storage capacity. At the time Rancho Calaveras was developed, the Silver Rapids Road ended the CCWD water treatment facility. Also, a point to be considered is that the Calaveras County is not the only ones who hold ownership of the water stored in Hogan Dam. Stockton East Water District originally put in Hogan Dam for flood control for the city of Stockton. They currently own the rights to 56.5% of all water stored in Hogan Dam. Unfortunately, due to a lack of notification by Ford Construction of its change of use for the rock quarry to the residents who live in the area and those who own water rights to the Calaveras River, like Stockton East Water District, they were denied their right to appeal in June. Proper notification to neighboring property owners should have been a requirement for any change of use. My dad lives in the old town of Valley Springs, and he had a neighbor who wanted to build a house closer to the lot line and needed a lot line adjustment. He went to all the residents in the neighborhood to notify them and allow them their right to have a say in the matter. This asphalt plant project was not noticed to the public. If it was not for a Sacramento attorney who happens to represent myvalleysprings.com, we, the residents of Calaveras County, would not have had any input. Our rights would have been violated by withholding information from the citizens. Any business that has the potential to negatively affect the lives and the health of as many Calaveras County residents and those who depend upon the Calaveras River in neighboring counties should have to be managed by a conditional use permit. The county residents vote for our local government officials to oversee the best interest. One of the jobs of the elected official is to serve and protect. Some of the decisions that are being made make me wonder, who are you serving, and why are we, the county residents, not being protected? The government has a process in place to set perimeters to help make the right choices. The conditional use permit is one of them. If a conditional use permit is deemed to be necessary, I do not see how the applicant can appeal that decision until they get the outcome they want. I'm referencing their appeal to the decision by the majority vote of the Board of Supervisors that was filed by Ford Construction and CB Asphalt that sought to overturn a decision by former Air Pollution Control Officer Brian Moss that some review of environmental impacts is required in order to grant authority to construct the asphalt plant. That vote was 4-1 that would require further environmental study. Board of Supervisors meeting was August 11, 2015. We the people look to you, the Board of Supervisors, to look out for the residents and to protect our health and safety. Our County Health Officer, Dr. Dean Kalita, MD, was ignored by the Planning Commission. Our Environmental Health Director, Jason Boetzer, was also ignored by the Planning Commission. Brian Moss also advised the county commissioners that there's a need for environmental impact review. These people are hired by Calaveras County taxpayers to oversee our county health and environment. They are telling us we have something to be concerned about. Why do we have their oversight if we are going to ignore the expertise they bring to their field? This proposed change to the rock quarry within 2 miles of the proposed asphalt plant, there are 2,047 homes. These homes will be affected by additional traffic on residential streets. Not only do we have water concerns, we also have air quality concerns. We have the addition of new hours of operation during the production of asphalt. We have children waiting along the roadways for their school bus. And we also have the large number of people who have to commute to the valley to be able to provide for their families. We have children who, unlike in the city, have the luxury of being allowed to play outside in a safe and healthy environment. Let's not destroy that. If any of you ever travel down Highway 26, you know that it was not designed for that type of traffic that would be necessary to provide the amounts of asphalt and complete a construction job and all of those who commute to work and school in the valley. Highway 12 is not much better, and it is also a commute and bus route. Odors and contaminated air will be transported throughout Calaveras County wherever the route leads to the construction sites. We have several homes that are on highways and roadways to be traveled as a transport route. The hot mix that will be transported in and out of the quarry is also a concern, as the deliveries will have to cross over the Calaveras River to and from the site. The road is not wide and it has several curves, as we do not want to have a truck overturn into the river. The toxic material used will be harmful to our lives and the lives of wildlife in and along the river. We do not have We do not have that concern with the raw rock currently leaves the rock quarry. It is a natural product and poses no harm to the environment, humans, or animals. We are also concerned about the already established businesses and recreational areas that will be affected by this change of use. Hogan Dam, which is operated by the Army Corps of Engineers, is located about a mile upstream from the rock quarry. This is a favorite place for camping, picnicking, and boating. The last few years, due to drought, we have not had the rain water to support full recreational use at the dam. But during normal water levels, this dam is a great destination for fishing and camping. The toxins that would be emitted into the air from the toxic particulates will hinder the regular business to the lake. The smell will also keep families from the lake, and those who use the walking trails for exercise will no longer be able to use them for that purpose, especially if they already suffer from respiratory problems. Another business that will most likely see a decline in use is the La Cantena Golf Course. The people come to Calaveras County to golf in fresh air and the country atmosphere and enjoy the beauty of nature. The wildlife that live on the golf course are awesome to watch. This golf course is a favorite of locals and is a destination for people who do not live here. Many tournaments are held here annually. Will this continue if the safeguards are not followed through with a conditional use permit and a full environmental impact review? As a resident, I have heard the Calaveras County government protecting the red-legged frog. I do not know much about the red-legged frog, just that it is an endangered species. I think it is time for our elected officials to put as much interest in our citizens as they do the red-legged frog. It is time to make decisions that protect the residents of Calaveras County. The taxpayers are the ones who will be left with a mess if you get this wrong. Businesses come and go. They do not always have a vested interest in the community they operate their business in. Most people spend a lifetime working to try to establish their assets to be able to live after they are no longer able to work. Retirement, also known as the golden years. If our assets suddenly lose value because of toxins and no fault of our own, we will still be the ones who suffer the losses. The Calaveras River is a wild trout lake and also the home of androgynous fish. This is another reason it is not wise to allow the storage and use of hazardous materials in large quantities to be used and stored above the Calaveras River, especially without first going through conditional use permit, environmental impact review, and a full CEQA. In closing, a conditional use permit is not a bad word. It is a process that allows businesses who wish to operate in Calaveras County to go through a study to see if it will be compatible with the area and set perimeters on a business that needs to be followed. It should not be up to the business to dictate to the county whether or not they have to get a conditional use permit. That is exactly what Ford Construction and CB Asphalt are doing when they want to bypass the process that protects the county residents. Please respect the public and follow the laws already on the books. Please do not try to change them. The law says if the environmental health officer determines that hazardous materials will be used, a conditional use permit will be needed, then go with that. Conditional use permit requires an EIR, then do that. If Ford Construction and CB Asphalt want to start up this business adventure, then they need to do it the right way, not try to bully their way into Calaveras County. Their agreement signed with both CCWD and CEWD both say, number 7, operator agrees to comply with all federal, state, and local obligations to operate the asphaltic concrete batch plant. Number 7E, operator agrees to comply with any conditions imposed by any of the above agencies referenced in 7A through D. Calaveras County Environmental Health Director has made it known that a conditional use permit is required. Failure to follow that would put the Ford Construction and CB Asphalt in violation of their agreements with CCWD and CEWD. Respectfully submitted on February 9th. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Brock Estes. I live at 3680 Laurent Lane, which is directly the hill across from the quarry. Terry, who just spoke, is actually my next-door neighbor, and we had known each other just in a way of, hi, how are you? We both came to this issue completely separately and then realized that we had concerns in common. I'm not sure she had a chance to tell you, but you should know she's a lifelong resident, born and raised here in Valley Springs. So I never ask a woman her age, but I'm guessing she's got 50 years worth of experience in how things have been done in this county. And when she references anything from the past, you can take it to the bank. She's been there. I'm different. I've only lived here 6 years, although my ancestors came out here to find gold, and my maternal grandmother was born in Stockton in 1894. So I have some ties to the county, but not nearly as many as Terry. I'd like to ask a quick question about the rules that we're proceeding by. Did I understand, Supervisor Edson, for you to say that the appellants would each have 15 minutes and then 10 minutes of rebuttal time?
Yes.
Okay. I don't think that's actually correct, but I'll play by those rules. As a former union rep, my motto is always, do it now, grieve it later. But I'll certainly play by those rules. I'm assuming, without asking, that all of you have read the staff report prepared by Mr. Boetzer, your environmental person. It's long, and I only skimmed it once, but I'm assuming you've all read it. But I am going to ask, for purposes of knowing where to focus, if you'll raise your hand if you've read the entire 21-page York Engineering Report. Okay. That was submitted to the Planning Commission by the proponents of the asphalt plant, and at the Planning Commission, no one was there from York to answer any questions about their report. Ms. Kinderman made two explanations for that. One, she said, was time constraints. It was simply too late to get someone there. And the other, she said, was, I didn't imagine that anyone would have any questions. It's so definitive. Now, I submitted a 16-page appeal which focuses almost exclusively on the York Engineering Report, simply because Ms. Kinderman used that as a reason for why the Planning Commission should not require them to have a CUP and an EIR. Can I ask if any of you have actually, and believe me, I'm not trying to put you on the spot. I know you've had at least 1,300 pages submitted to you on this issue. So I don't expect that you've read everything. Can I ask if anyone has actually read my 16-page appeal? Because that will allow me to focus. Okay, seeing no hands raised on either the York report or my appeal.
Can I interrupt just for a quick second?
Excuse me?
We, as a board, we don't respond to public comment questions.
This isn't public comment. I'm an appellant.
Okay, so this is your time to give your
Yes,
testimony?
but I'm correcting Supervisor Oliveira. This is not public comment. I'm an appellant who paid money to become an appellant. I have also spoken to public comment in the past, and you're right, that would not be appropriate. In this case, I'm not so sure, but seeing no hands, I will assume that I have to go kind of from the beginning, that we don't have any shared information on this subject, because perhaps you have not read either my appeal or the 21-page York report.
So, sir, you have the right to give your testimony?
Thank you.
And
that's enough.
Okay.
Thanks.
Good.
So, I think we should define some of our terms. Conditional use permit, what does it mean? If you have one and you require one, then there's an environmental impact report done, which very well may involve CEQA. What is CEQA? CEQA is the California Environmental Quality Act. I think I've got that right. It was signed into law in the 70s by then Governor Ronald Reagan, who was not, as I can tell, any kind of a flaming liberal. He signed it into law to protect us environmentally. So when a project goes in that could have environmental impacts on an existing neighborhood, a study is done. Then conditions are attached to the permit to operate. And the company that puts in this case, a hot asphalt plant, must live by those conditions. They're in writing. If they don't, the county itself has the right to say, wait a minute, you're not living up to the conditions of the permit we issued you. Now, what if there is no conditional use permit? What if you vote to say, no, we don't need one. We don't need a conditional use permit. We don't need an environmental impact report. Then, if there are problems, the county has no dog in the fight. We then, as residents, have to contact a state agency and ask them to intervene. Now, sometimes the state responds quickly, and I'm so proud of the fact that I pay taxes to the state of California, and when the Butte Fire happened, they had everybody in here right away. People from other counties, people from all over the state, thank goodness. But I've also been to the DMV, and it's a pretty long process. And sometimes the state doesn't respond as quickly as you'd like. The counties usually respond quicker, because if they don't, you can go into Supervisor Edson's office and say, how come you're not acting on this? So why we want a conditional use permit and environmental impact report is so that this county will have some control over what goes on up at Hogan Quarry. Why they don't want one is so that this county will have no control over that. It's going to be your vote that determines whether or not we control our own destiny or whether we cede that to the state. It's as simple as that. Now, I'm going to go to the York report, and I know you got 1,300 pages. If you want to pull it out and look at it, when I quote the page number, you can do that. If you want to pull out my appeal, you can do that too. I'll take a minute to let you do that by wasting some time with an almost useless analogy. You don't even have to listen if you don't want to. This isn't important. I do it because Commissioner Turno at the Planning Commission is so fond of making analogies. We've heard a lot of them. The craziest one I ever heard was when he compared the operation of an asphalt plant to a machine shop. If you're going to make an asphalt plant, get a conditional use permit, you better make a machine shop do it too, because they use hazardous chemicals. Well, yeah, about 1 million times less hazardous chemicals, but that's the analogy he made. Here's mine. Let's say it's 3 years ago, and one of you supervisors just won the Powerball lottery. And after taxes, you've got $1 billion, and your life is different. You can do whatever you want. Take a moment, think, wow, what would I do? So let's say that you heard that the NBA was forcing the Sacramento Kings to sell their franchise. And the price is going to be somewhere between $300 and $500 million. And you thought, hey, I got that. Maybe I'll buy them. My niece and nephew could sit in the front row. So you call me in Southern California, because you know I'm kind of an expert on sports franchises, and you know I can research them, and you say, hey, would this be a good investment for me? Should I do it? And we email back and forth, and at some point I say to you, well, here's the important things about buying a sports franchise. You got to know who your best players are, what contracts you have them under, for how long. Are they good contracts? Could you trade them if you had to? And of course, you got to look at your facility and what your contract is there. So you email me back, but in your excitement, you accidentally hit the wrong key twice. You hit 5 instead of 6. So your letter to me says, well, my 2 best players are both signed for the next 3 years at very favorable contracts. They're 5'11" and 5'8". Now I look at that, and I'm going to give you an answer, is this a good thing? And my answer is going to be, well, very few franchise. I'm going to assume that your 2 best players at 5'11" and 5'8" are guards. And I'm going to say there's not a long history of guard-oriented franchises being successful. You got to go all the way back to the 89-90 Detroit Pistons, who had 3 guards that were under 6'3", who rotated. So there's only 2 teams doing it now. The Warriors tried it with Steph Curry and Monte Ellis. They had to trade Ellis. It didn't work. They drafted a 6'7" guard to play next to him. But you see, the entire report that I send to you is going to be worthless, because I'm operating on the facts that your two best players are 5'11 and 5'8, when in fact, they're 6'11 and 6'8. That's DeMarcus Cousins and Rudy Gay. So the report I sent to you based on the facts you gave me is going to be practically worthless. And it's exactly the same way with the York report. Because Ms. Kinderman has stated in writing in her letter of June 24th, which is I'm sure in your packet, and many times to the Planning Commission, I believe, not here, I'm not sure, but many times to the Planning Commission. She has a mantra. There will, oh, by the way, Supervisor Oliver, I believe, I can't pronounce your last name, but your appointee to the Planning Commission is Lisa, last name begins with an M. She held up the York report. Am I incorrect? I thought she was your appointee. Sorry.
Continue, sir.
Someone else's appointee. She held up the York report and said, the York report says there will only be 2 additional truck trips per year. She then corrected herself to 2 additional truck trips per day per year if this goes through. Now, I'm sure you've read the staff report where Mr. Boser focuses on information supplied to him by CB, which says that in maximum weeks, because most paving is done from late spring to early fall, summer being the height of it, it's a weather thing, there will be approximately 150 trucks per day leaving the quarry with hot mixed asphalt, HMA. That's a fact Mr. Boser has made based on information provided from CD. And I know you've seen the slide where it says 3,000 tons per day mixed in max use weeks. That's 150 truck trips, 20 tons per truck. Now the York report says in numerous places that there will be less than 20 trucks per day, less than 3 trucks per hour. That's a fact. It's stated in the York report. Ms. Kinderman will undoubtedly address that fact when she speaks, and I will then rebut. So you've got 2 very, very different numbers. You've got Ms. Kinderman's report saying less than 20 trucks per day, less than 3 per hour. You've got Mr. Boser's report that says 150 trucks per day. That, by the way, works out to 1 every 4 minutes of a 10-hour day. Now, this is predominantly in the summertime. I live in that neighborhood. I see the 25 kids who play in my neighborhood. I know exactly what they do. I know about the kids with the go-karts. I know about the trampoline boy. I know about the little girl who rides her bike all day long, like a rat in a maze from one end of Harper to Silver and Laurent, back again and again for hours. I see the baseball teams that practice right on the corner of Silver Rapids and Laurent. If you've been by there, you've seen the red batting cages. The guy that lives there, his name is Eric. His boys play on a team. But other teams come there to practice also because he set his backyard up to be a regulation infield. Those kids are going to be practicing all day, every day in the summer. And every 4 minutes, a steaming load of hot asphalt is going to pass within 20 feet of them. The smell will likely never dissipate. However, the York report does make very clear that without naming a distance, they say the distance from sensitive receptors is important in determining what effect odors will have. The York report also says that odors are considered an irritant, and then it lists things that they can cause, which include nausea and vomiting. And this is not my words, this is from the York report.
30 seconds.
Okay. Nausea and vomiting don't seem to me like irritants, but that's how they're classified. Every 4 minutes, the baseball team on the corner, the little girl on her bicycle, the kids with the go-karts, the kid on the trampoline. Every 4 minutes. You really have to decide, who do I believe? Do I believe less than 20 trucks per day, less than 3 per hour? Or do I believe my environmental officer, 150 trucks per day? Thank you very much. I'll see you in rebuttal time.
Good morning, Chairman, Supervisors. Got several issues I want to bring up today, but I want to start with jurisdiction. Oh, I apologize. Andrew Grunman, representing My Valley Springs.
Joyce Tackle, myvalleysprings.com.
I'd like to start off discussing the jurisdiction. It was raised both in the staff report and in the proponent's letter that jurisdiction was not raised at the hearing. The first resolution, and accordingly the first formal determination by the Planning Commission, was December 17th, 2015. We timely appealed that. There was indication in the proponent's letter that there was a formal determination of something on August 13th that we should have appealed. I couldn't find anything in the record. And then there's the issue of that it wasn't an issue that was brought up at the hearing, relying on section 1798070 that states that no issue which was not addressed at the hearing upon which the appeal is based shall be part of the appeal process. Generally, this is correct. There's case law showing that an issue must be raised in the trial court to be argued on appeal. However, there is a well-known exception. First year law school, jurisdiction is always an issue and is never waived. In fact, the seminal case on this, failure to object to subject matter jurisdiction in the trial court, does not preclude raising it for the first time on appeal. This case was called Consolidated Theatrical Stage Employees Union. In this case, the California Supreme Court was faced with a jurisdictional issue regarding whether a labor issue in front of them had been brought to the National Labor Relations Board and whether that board had declined jurisdiction. Jurisdiction had not been brought up at the trial court level. The Supreme Court noted, though, because of the jurisdictional nature of the issue, the court was required to consider whether the original court had jurisdiction. That was Russell v. Electrical Workers, Local 569. Here is a similar case. In effect, the trial court was the Planning Commission, and you serve as the appellate body. The proponents appealed the planning director's decision pursuant to 1798.020, and I will read that section to you. A decision of any planning staff member may be appealed to the Planning Commission by following the appeal procedures in section 1798070 and submitting a written request accompanied by the appropriate fee within 15 days from the date of staff decision. This was done. A decision of any planning staff member. Planning staff, that language limits it to planning staff. The construction canon of statutory interpretation, expressio unius, the expression of certain things excludes others. A lot of case law on that, not rocket science. If the Board of Supervisors had wished to include anything relating to permits, they would have put that in that code section. If they wanted to review the health officer determination, it would have said so in that section. It doesn't. It says planning staff members. To try to bootstrap this because it was a planning issue is nonsense. The code distinguishes between planning staff and health officers in some sections of the code. Clearly, there are some sections of the county code that mentions health officer. There are some that refer to planning staff. There's no doubt about that. In section 020, the board should conclude the draft of the code purposely excluded health officer in that section. What that meant is at the time this was drawn, the people that drew the code, the supervisors, knew the difference between a health officer and a planning staff member and purposely did not put health officer in that section. Where Congress includes particular language in one section of the statute but omits it in another, it is generally presumed that Congress acts intentionally and purposefully in the disparate inclusion or exclusion. Rosello versus United States. The text of 020 does not include determination of the health officer, and the board should resist reading health officer into the section where it says planning staff. Lamy versus United States, refusing to read an absent word into a statute because the result would be the construction of the statute, not the construction of the statute, but the enlargement of it. Here, the Planning Commission read health officer into their section. You are the Board of Supervisors, you drafted this, they acted outside of their authority by expanding their authority to beyond what was granted them by the Board of Supervisors. And the proponent didn't appeal. He did appeal the planning director's decision, and they don't dispute that the planning director followed the law. When he was given with his determination, he issued a letter saying they must obtain a conditional use permit. In fact, the planning director was notified by the health officer. He then required a conditional use permit. But the planning commission reviewed the health officer's determination, not the planning director's. So the whole issue in front of us is not a review of what the planning director did. They knew that he had to do if he had a determination. They went underneath to a different agency that they didn't even have authority over and reviewed the health officer's determination. The county org chart shows that the EMA and the health officer are responsible to the Board of Supervisors, not part of the planning department. They didn't appeal the health officer's decision to the Board of Supervisors timely. They're barred pursuant to County Code 1798040. They don't bootstrap onto it because they appealed to the wrong body to somehow have it carried here now that they are at the right body. They failed to appeal to the right body in a timely fashion. We'll set jurisdiction aside. I think that one's pretty clear cut. That's not hard to appeal. But let's look at what they didn't do. The proponent did not even provide the required information to the health officer to let him make his determination. On May 18, 2015, Calaveras County Air Pollution Control District received the application for an authority to construct. On May 29, 2015, they deemed the application incomplete. On June 25, 2015, they resubmitted their application. The Environmental Management Agency Administrator, acting as the health officer, reviewed the resubmitted application and determined there may be a significant effect. On July 2nd, he transmitted his findings to the planning director. The planning director notified that they were to obtain a conditional use permit. On July 31st, they appealed these determinations. In the proponent's letter to the Board of Supervisors, it alleges that myvalleysprings.com sat around and wasted time by not appealing the issue of jurisdiction, which wasn't right, which we did not do. Yet you see the timeline, though so far, has been over half the year of last year. At August 13th, they were advised they had to submit additional information because they actually drafted a letter on August 24th between the Environmental Management Agency and the proponent regarding the unsubmitted information. On December 7th, Dr. Dean Kaleda, the county health officer, submitted a letter saying there may be a significant effect. At the December 10th hearing, the health officer again noted they still had not provided required, complete, and consistent information as was required. At December 10th, the health officer again found there may be a significant effect, and that's why we're here in front of this. We believe that the health officer did find substantial evidence, and to find to the contrary would be a vote of no confidence against both the county health officer and the Environmental Management Agency. I'll give you the definition of substantial evidence. Substantial evidence is more than a mere scintilla. It means such relevant evidence as a reasonable mind might accept as adequate to support a conclusion. So this is something. The health officer made his determination based only on incomplete information because that's all he was given. He was never given complete information. He demonstrated substantial evidence. He found an air quality odor problem. I see my time's running short. I wish for Joyce to have, she has some stuff to present, and that's what we'll do now.
Yep. I refer you to your Board of Supervisors packet, attachment 25, page 922 to 924. It's the alternative resolution reversing Planning Commission determination. I'm going to start at now, therefore be it resolved. The Board of Supervisors grants the appeals as indicated by X marks in the fields below, thereby reversing the decision of the Planning Commission based on one or more of the following findings. 1, the applicant has not complied with 17-42-035, and it has failed to provide the health officer with adequate information to complete his analysis. The appeals are granted. Evidence. The Environmental Management Agency's staff report explains how the applicant has not yet provided complete documentation. The parties agreed in writing about what documentation was reasonably necessary for the health officer to review in order to factor in the applicant's compliance with existing laws and regulations. 2, after considering all the evidence and testimony presented by project proponents and the Environmental Management Agency administrator acting as health officer and assuming the project proponent's compliance with all relevant laws and regulations, substantial evidence supports the health officer's determination that the type, method of use, and/or quantity of hazardous substances that will accompany the proposed change in use are such that there may be a significant effect on the environment. The appeals are granted. Evidence. Existing laws and regulations do not capture all the potentially significant effects of the environment that could result from the type, quantity, and method of use of hazardous materials proposed by the applicant, namely diesel fuel and asphalt or bitumen. The health officer has provided substantial evidence that even assuming the applicant's compliance with existing laws and regulations, there is still a potential for a significant environmental effect related to the type, quantity, and/or method of use of materials. 17.42.035 does not require the health officer to be certain that there will be a significant environmental effect, only that there is the potential for one. The evidence in the record suggests that the proposed type, quantity, and/or method of use of asphalt and/or diesel fuel could negatively impact the physical health of nearby residents, even if the applicant complies with all laws and regulations, particularly if there is an accidental release of these materials. 2 engineer reports also acknowledge that there will likely be an odor associated with the production and transportation of asphalt, and this odor will frequently be perceptible at many residences near the proposed use. While an unpleasant odor does not necessarily signify a risk to physical health, the evidence of the frequency and number of residents likely to be affected adequately supports that there may be a significant effect on the environment by way of odor. That's it.
Question?
I think we're done. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so we're going to take, before the applicant gives their testimony, we're going to take a 5-minute break. Okay. Started, so please, if you can take your seat. That's why they have it. You didn't hear me. Thank you. Okay, so now we're to the applicant. Thank you.
Good morning, Chair, fellow board members. My name is Diane Kinderman. I'm an attorney with the law firm of Abbott and Kinderman in Sacramento, California, and I represent CB Asphalt in this matter. And we appreciate the opportunity to respond to the appeals. I want to thank you for that. I also wanted to thank staff for the robust staff report they pulled together. I understand it was a lot of work, and we definitely appreciate their efforts. So in the interest of time and respecting the need to keep this moving forward, I am going to defer my comments to later on to a rebuttal and my PowerPoint to later on this afternoon, whenever that might be. But I would like you to know that with me I have Ann McQueen, Ms. Ann McQueen from York Engineering, who prepared the report upon which the Planning Commission relied in its determination of significance. She has a presentation that is approximately 20 minutes. If we would be given the opportunity for Ms. McQueen to make her presentation in her 20-minute time frame, that would be appreciated. If not, she will race through and try to get it down to 7 minutes. Because the second person that I have here is Mr. Mark Stelges. He is a toxicologist, and he is here in response to comments raised in the appeals regarding the toxicology issues. His PowerPoint is about 15 to 20 minutes as well. So I request the opportunity to have them present, and perhaps present for longer than 15 minutes each.
What? So what does it say the board here?
I think they should be allowed to make their presentations because...
There we go.
We'll clear this room, we'll conduct the meeting. Everybody will be outside.
Really?
Chairman,
Let's please keep it down so we can talk, all right?
15 minutes, right?
I believe they should have the opportunity to make their presentation. We had 6 appellants, 15 minutes each. They should be allowed at least the time to make their presentation, with only 2 presenters, I understand?
Correct.
It's still less time than the
Give them all the time they want.
So Debbie, what do you think?
Well, we discussed the rules prior, and at this point, I have to stick to the rules that we discussed prior.
Steve?
We gave the appellants 15 minutes each, times 6.
Yeah, we did actually all come up with these guidelines before the plan.
As usual.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think we should probably stick with the original rules that we agreed to.
Understood. So
If we'd have known about this beforehand, then we could have probably made arrangements, but we came into it with a predetermined route on the information we knew on who was going to give their presentations.
I understand. Thank you for discussing it and providing me some input on it. And what they will do is truncate their presentations to the best of their ability, and they're of course here to answer any questions.
Okay.
So I'm going to approach the clerk. I've got their PowerPoints here that we're handing out to you. Thank you very much. There you go.
How much time do I have?
You have 7.5 minutes.
I have 7.5 minutes. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for the 7.5 minutes. My name is Ann McQueen with York Engineering, and I'm here to summarize the earlier reports that were submitted. So just a very brief background on York. We're a full-service consulting firm. We have quite a few senior staff who were involved in this project with over 25 years' experience. We've submitted over 50 permit applications just in the past 10 years to various air districts throughout California. So we are working throughout Southern and Northern California, and we've been contracted since September of 2015. So we were initially responding to information requests that were primarily about asphalt transport and associated odors, mobile source emissions, hazardous materials impacts. Then we were also asked recently to do a peer review of the engineering evaluation that was done by the county's contractor, Ray Kapahi. So just very briefly, the conclusions that were presented previously, we found that the fugitive emissions were not significant. The odors associated with the transport were also not significant. The mobile source emissions were not significant, and the hazardous materials impacts were not significant. I was just given a note to be sure and mention that I have a PhD in engineering, and I'm here, I have 25 years of experience myself. So we peer-reviewed Ray Kapahi's report. So at this time, we're looking at basically the comments received, and what we tried to do was look at those comments and see if there were any new technical issues, and we did not find that there were new technical issues. So we thought that instead we should focus on explaining our previous results and making them clear. One of the very important aspects of what we did is that we used publicly available significance thresholds. So what's important about that is that when you're trying to decide if a hazardous impact is significant, it's very important to look at what agencies have decided. And if there are no thresholds published in a certain county, it's very common to go to nearby counties or other agencies and look at their significance thresholds, because that helps us make a determination as to whether a project is significant. So this just summarizes the assumptions, and given the short time we have, I won't go into the details. I just wanted to mention that the assumptions have not changed at any time. So these are the assumptions that were used from the beginning of the project, which was the air quality permit application. So I draw your attention to the 250,000 tons per year. And basically, the petroleum asphalt portion of that is 5%, which comes out to 625 trucks per year. And we then averaged that over 310 days, and that's basically the 2 trucks per day that we're looking at, and that's just the standard procedure for doing the analysis that we were doing. And looking at the significance thresholds, these are the thresholds that we use to make those determinations that I showed you in that first slide. So we used a health risk threshold for the asphalt transport from the South Coast. They have actual emission thresholds. We used, for mobile source emissions, we use CEQA significance thresholds. For hazardous materials impacts, we use South Coast CEQA hazardous materials thresholds, which is where we got the hydrogen sulfide of the 500 pounds. And for the engineering evaluation, we looked at AB25, we were peer reviewing Ray Kapahi's work, and he looked at AB25 health risk thresholds, which are the correct thresholds that are used in permitting throughout California. So these are the summaries and the conclusions that we reached in the last, I pressed the wrong button here. Engineer or not, we sometimes mess up here. So we need an attorney to help us out. I think the one right before that one. No, Deb, sorry, I have the conclusions twice. Sorry. Down. I can keep going forward if you want me to do that. Sorry about that, folks. So, basically, these are the conclusions that we reached using those thresholds that I was mentioning in the last table. And basically, in each case, we find that it was below the thresholds that were the thresholds that that are basically being applied, that are required for these types of analyses. So, for example, TAC emissions are less than significant.
In this case, we made a qualitative determination that was tied to the TAC emissions. We also said that odors were less than significant. The mobile source emissions are below the CEQA significance thresholds. So in terms of the peer review of the air quality permit application, we looked at the methods. They were the correct methods. We saw that that the contractor carried out all the necessary steps. He relied on the same assumptions that we used in our analysis. He used an AB 2588 prioritization score threshold, which is what's commonly used throughout California in air quality permitting. And he presented a finding of no significant health risk from the plant itself based on that threshold. In terms of the hazardous materials studies, again, we were looking at thresholds that have been applied. So here it's basically the South Coast hazardous materials list. Petroleum asphalt and hot mix asphalt are actually not on that list. So we instead looked at hydrogen sulfide, and basically there's a threshold of 100 pounds for hydrogen sulfide, and if we look at a single truck, assuming that all the hydrogen sulfide present in it were released, which is a worst case scenario and very unlikely, that amount of hydrogen sulfide is still 1,000 times less than this threshold of 100 pounds. And basically, the other aspect is regarding spills, and both of these materials are expected to solidify quickly if spilled, and that's why they're not considered to pose a significant impact. So these are the same conclusions that I mentioned earlier. Again, we found no significant impacts from the studies we did regarding asphalt transport and from our peer review of the engineering evaluation for the actual asphalt plant. And if you have any questions, please let me know.
I do.
How much of the 15 minutes is remaining?
Mr. Chair, I have a question for you.
All right, ma'am. We have a couple of questions for you.
You want to go first, Mike? Mike, you want to go?
Yeah, not a problem. Thank you very much. Ma'am, the information that you provided here, that's for bulk type application, transportation. And you did use a safety data sheet for asphalt in determining the time level and the exposure and parts per millions when we get down to the actual exposure. Is that correct?
The exposure is calculated using an estimate. There's a dispersion model. We didn't actually do dispersion modeling in this exercise because the emissions were below the threshold just based on emissions. So what they do is they have a screening approach, and if the emissions are low enough, you don't even trigger the modeling. And that's the same with Ray Kapahi. He didn't actually do modeling because under the prioritization score, it was below the level at which you have to do modeling.
Okay, thank you.
And I had a quick question for you.
Sure.
When you talk about trucks, you have the overall year max
Yes.
for your trucks. Do you have a max per day? Because if you average them all across the year, but if you only have them going, 6 months or a month out of the year, and obviously the impacts of the trucks could be much greater. I was wondering if you had a max capped with how many per day?
I'm sorry, I can't answer that question. I'd have to defer to the applicant. That was not part of our study. Yes?
Okay, thank you.
Excuse me. While the appellants were stating their cases, everybody was quiet and respectful. And I would appreciate it if you give the same respect to these folks up here. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'm Dr. Mark Stelgis, an environmental toxicologist with 25 years of experience. As a consultant, I'm expecting that most of the people that are sitting behind me believe that I've been paid to say the things that I'm saying here today, which is not true. I am being paid. It's my job to be a toxicologist. I do risk assessment. and I evaluate the safety and potential risks associated with either things that have been released into the environment or projects that are proposed, such as this one. I certainly like the passion that's on display here. This is a very emotional issue. Whenever you're talking about toxins and potential releases in the environment, emotion is always running rampant. Flint, Michigan certainly has made the news recently, and that only gives people opportunity to talk about how they don't want to be another Flint, and I'm certain that none of us want to be another Flint. So that's a little bit about me. I worked in California for 24 years, and environmental protection is my passion. I have a wildlife ecology degree from University of Missouri, and enjoy backpacking just up the road here, although I can't do that right now because of the fire. I'm looking forward to getting back into that. So I'm here mostly to talk about the specific concerns raised in the letter from Dr. Estoesta from a couple months ago. Concerns about birth defects, and he mentioned some of those again this morning. Respiratory concerns for children and people with compromised lung function, which he also reiterated this morning, and concerns of developing cancer. And there have been similar concerns from other citizens in the appeal process. Trying to zip through this here. So what I did was I reviewed those public letters and the concerns, compiled regulatory toxicological information from California Environmental Protection Agency, US EPA, the Centers for Disease Control. You'll note that some of those are the same sources that were used by Dr. Estoesta and presented earlier this morning. And then I prepared a summary letter. And here are my key findings. There is no scientific evidence to support Dr. Estoesta's conclusions regarding the likelihood that birth defects will result from exposure to compounds that could be emitted from the asphalt plant. And the key here is relationships among exposure, dose, and toxicity. And that was ignored in the presentation prepared by Dr. Estoesta. He talked about all the toxic effects. He didn't talk about exposure. And that is what's key. Everything is actually a toxin. Water is a toxin. College students have been known to die from drinking too much water too fast as part of fraternity, whatever you want to call it. Salt is also a toxin. If you have too much of that, it can lead to hypertension. So what we talk about here is not whether the chemical can cause toxicity. Every chemical has inherent toxicity. The question is, how much would you be exposed to, and is it reasonably anticipated that it could cause an effect? And so based on that, the two conclusions that I've reached are that the potential for health effects to result from either operation or transport is negligible. The operation of the plant is based on the county's engineering evaluation and supported. The potential for health effects from the transport is negligible, and that's based on the York Engineering transportation evaluation that was recently provided. So I'm not going to try to teach toxicology in 30 seconds, but I'm going to present one slide, and this is, I think, the key point that we need to talk about here. For every chemical, as the dose goes up, and the dose is not how much gets emitted in the air, it's how much gets into your body. Nothing is actually absorbed. Until you get something absorbed into your body, there can be no effect. So it doesn't matter what's in the air directly above the plant. All that matters is what is actually potentially inhaled and actually gets inhaled by a person or an animal. 30 seconds. Thank you. And the response obviously goes up as the dose goes up. Most of the concerns that Dr. Estoesta raised are in this level of the dose response curve, which means that almost everybody's going to be affected. The releases that we are talking about and were in the engineering evaluation report are in this range, right at the threshold or below the threshold where responses would be expected to occur. So while yes, toxicity can occur if you're exposed here, what we're talking about is right here. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yes. Excuse me, sir.
Doctor, can I ask you a question or two?
So concerned about getting it done on time, I forgot the questions.
Seeing we're talking about toxins, the exposure to toxins in a variety of situations, employment, are those controlled by any type of federal document, state document, they're called MSDSs for short, material data safety sheets?
MSDSs are required to be provided when toxic chemicals are included in a mix or in a solvent. And it gives you advice on how to deal with the hazardous chemical, with responses, with any kind of protection for workers. MSDSs are really designed to protect the workers directly working with the substance. They're not intended or focused on public exposure.
So in your opinion, would it be more stringent for a worker in a situation than the public?
Actually, it's just the opposite. The workplace tends to have more lenient air concentrations of acceptable exposure that are called permissible exposure limits under Cal OSHA. And those are required to be met, or the concentrations have to be less than that. If they're above that, then you have to shut down. For the environment, for public, that is evaluated primarily by the Department of Toxic Substances Control, and they have lifetime exposures to residents, and their values are much more restrictive because the workplace tends to just have healthy adults, whereas the environment, as you've heard today with the public, you have small children, you have elderly with respiratory problems, and the values that the Department of Toxic Substances and Control put out are designed to be protective of all of those people.
So in your opinion, the analysis you did regarding this particular issue is even more stringent than what Cal OSHA and your manufacturer's safety data sheets project for our workers. Is that correct?
That's very much true, yes.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions?
Not at this time.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so. All right, so now we get to go to members of the public. We have 3 minutes for each member that wants to speak. Please try to not duplicate the message. Thank you.
Hi.
I know. Dr. E? Dr. E? You'll have your whole 10 minutes here after the public comments because you're an appellant.
Go ahead. Okay, hi. My name is Rebecca Tracy. I live at 3180 Barday Road. Some say Bard, some say Barday. That sounds more exotic. Road in Valley Springs. Initially, so that I don't duplicate, Mr. Edson, like you said, what the doctors have said, that's primarily what I'd like to address. I found myself kind of nodding at the presentation and getting a little bit frustrated because it really is a matter of a cumulative effect on people. And the gentleman, the doctor can say, we're working with toxic levels down here. Dr. Estoest is talking about levels up here. And what we're really talking about are who's to determine what body can handle what. So what I want to share with you is about me personally. I came to Calaveras County. I've lived in Calaveras County for 14 years. And I'm a businesswoman. I'm not working now due to health reasons. And I managed multi-million-dollar businesses over many years, all in San Joaquin County and down into Stanislaus, and very successful career, but my health took a turn. And I eventually reached the point where I could not work. Those conditions, the first time I was admitted into Mark Twain St. Joseph's, the doctor there was completely stumped, couldn't figure out. I had lesions this big on my skin, where the center of my skin was like liquefying. My face swelled up, I couldn't see out my eyes. And the only conclusion before they could get me to rheumatologists were that something I was reacting to my body from a standpoint of what I could handle had reached its max, whether it was environmental fumes, whether it was gases, plastics, what have you. There was a threshold where my whole immune system was compromised. So when you look at me standing here, you'd never know that, but I have significant battles. So with I'm a 30-year diabetic. Then I was diagnosed with, part of that diagnosis was lupus, the skin lupus that affects your skin. I then started having respiratory problems with my lungs. And of course, my husband and I, we were in another part of Calaveras County until 4 years ago when, what's that? 30 seconds. So my point to you specifically, to listen to your health director and to the doctor, that not everyone fits. It's not just children. And the home that we bought, we hope to retire in. We're working very hard to have it paid off so that at the point my husband stops working, we can still afford to be here. But I can't afford to stay here if my condition brought me here. I was just speaking, one quick comment. When I was introducing myself to the attorney here, I mentioned to her my health issue. And right away she said, oh, well then the foothills are the worst place that you could be. She said, because the drafts off the delta and everything push and hold everything up against the foothills. Okay, if she's telling me right now this is the worst place that I could be, why are we having something that's going to emit fumes and are going to hold them against our foothills right here in Valley Springs?
Okay, ma'am, that's
okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
No one can say that this is not community at its best. Marty Crane, Valley Springs. Attending every Board of Supervisors meeting enables me to witness the discussions that lead up to each and every board action. I have witnessed each and every supervisor praise Agency Administrator Environmental Health Director Jason Baetzer for his expertise and leadership in the Butte Fire recovery work and for his dedication in working in harmony with all other impacted departments. Jason has been with the County Environmental Management Agency since 2002 and became manager of the Environmental Health Department in 2008. The county was certified in June of 2002 by Cal EPA to begin implementation of hazardous material and hazardous waste programs, and Jason was hired by the county to begin implementation of these programs at the county level. He then moved to the position of Agency Administrator of the Environmental Management Agency, and in 2015 to Director of Environmental Health, the purpose and goal of which is to protect public health, safety, and the environment. Jason came to his current position in Calaveras County with laudable credentials, a degree in environmental and public health. He is a state of California certified underground and above ground storage tank inspector, a registered environmental health specialist, and has participated heavily in statewide policy and legislation regarding hazardous materials and hazardous waste programs. Jason has been with the county for 13 and a half years, totaling 17 years hands-on experience in the field of environmental health. Among our currently seated supervisors, to the best of my knowledge, no one has the training or expertise of Mr. Baetzer. That's why we hired him, why we promoted him to head up the Environmental Management Agency and to serve as Director of the Environmental Health Department. That's why we have entrusted him to protect the environmental future of our county. Jason Baetzer is the expert that this very board appointed. His opinions are in harmony with those of Dr. Estuesta, whose large practice is located in Valley Springs, in the heart of this proposed asphalt plant area, and Dr. Kaleda, our county health officer of many years. Both Drs. Estuesta and Kaleda have weighed in on this asphalt plant issue because the decisions being made absolutely affect the health and welfare of our citizens. These are our experts. By the ongoing comments and regular praise expressed by this board, it has become apparent that Jason Baetzer's stellar performance during this Butte fire recovery was and continues to be considered exemplary. I have watched as this board accepts Mr. Baetzer's opinions and decisions without question because he has proven himself to be effective by effective outcomes based on proven science, best practices, and experience. That being said, surely that same trust should extend to this asphalt plant staff report. If he's good enough for all of that, he's certainly good enough to provide credible direction about the health and environmental impact of an asphalt plant. Thank you.
My name is Jenny Solbakken-Rowerdink. I'm here to represent many of the parents and their families from Valley Springs. I live at 2907 Dunn Road in Valley Springs. That's 1.7 miles from the proposed hot asphalt plant. I live there with my husband and my 3 young girls. I'm here to speak to you today about how a hot asphalt plant and our drinking water do not mix. With that, I'd like to read a little excerpt from the key parts of the Environmental Health Director, Jason Boetzer's staff report regarding water pollution. The report says that the emissions, such as diesel particulate matter, are airborne pollutants from human sources that can deposit back into land and water bodies, sometimes at a great distance from the source, and can be an important contributor to declining water quality and other environmental impacts. This is critical due to the proximity of the Calaveras River, approximately 800 feet away from the quarry, and the Genuine Water Treatment Plant, approximately 200 feet just downstream from the proposed hot asphalt plant. The fact that a drinking water source is approximately 800 feet away and that 521 homes within a 1-mile radius signifies that there may be both short-term and long-term significant effects to the environment and public health. The Calaveras River is a sensitive receptor and a drinking water source for over 10,000 local residents. Along with serving as a drinking water source for Stockton East, City of Stockton drinking water, the water intake for the Genuine Drinking Water Plant operated by CCWD is less than 2,000 feet downriver and processes up to 3.5 million gallons of drinking water per day. This is not addressed in any of the documents submitted by the applicant, nor is it adequately addressed by laws enforced by the local health officer. Even assuming the applicant is in compliance with all laws and regulations, EMA cannot responsibly assert that there is no potential significant impact to a source of drinking water. Please, first off, this is a picture of my children. I have 3 young girls. One just learned how to ride her bike. She rides it on and around where the trucks carry rock. There are no sidewalks. I'm okay with 2 trucks per day carrying asphalt, but I'm not sure, I'm confused as to if that is the case. My last thing that I want to finish up saying is, as an informed citizen and a parent, which many of you may be, would you let your family live next to a hot asphalt plant? No. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Tamara Laws, and I'm a 55-year-old California native. I was born in El Dorado County, and I've been living here in Calaveras County for almost 9 years now. Came to Valley Springs to get away from industrialization, to get away from the things that you find in the city, the bad air, the bad water, to get back into a community where our children are of importance, where we look for ways to give them things to entertain them, educate them, and make sure that their lives go on. All I can say is, from everything I've read and everything I've been told, it appears that, like my dad used to say, the cart was put before the horse, because I was assured by the governor's office that all of my concerns would be addressed by CEQA, which has been bypassed because there has not been a conditional use permit. This is your job, and we as the people are here to tell you, please do it. Please request that conditional use permit so we can get the CEQA reports that we're asking for.
Good morning. My name is Roberta Morris Corso.
I live at 2577 Henny Lane in Valley Springs. I'd like to leave some information for everyone. I have an envelope for everybody here. This is on the health effects, including birth defects specific to asphalt. I've also included, I only have one copy because it's 150 pages, but this is the CDC information on working around asphalt that you might be interested in. So at the very least, I don't want to take up any more of your time. Everybody's really saying the same thing I want to say, except a conditional use report, environmental impact report is necessary. Please consider this.
I'm Will Moore from Rancho Calaveras. I want to point out two things. In that PowerPoint presentation with the engineer with the PhD, they said there's being shipped from there 320,000 tons of asphalt per year, and that works out to 2 truckloads a day. Well, 2 truckloads a day is 50 tons. 320,000 tons a year is 1,000 tons a day for 320 days, and that plant is only going to operate for 260 days. So you're talking 11 or 1,200 tons a day, not 40 or 50. Secondly, appended to by earlier comments, what's happening here is corporate welfare. I mean, exempting this company from all of these rules and all of the expectations is nothing but corporate welfare, dishing out welfare to people who don't deserve it and don't need it. And this is being done by the Planning Commission, not even elected people. Thank you.
I'll be real brief. My name's John Reed. I live on Silver Rapids Road there in Valley Springs, just down where the plant's going to go in. And what I have to say is, if you won't protect my health and my safety for me and my wife, then believe me, you will not be getting our votes. Thank you.
Are we having fun yet? My name's Dave Beatles. We live in Rancho Calaveras, have for about 8 years. I've got a little different perspective because I worked for government for 40 years, 3 counties and a city. So I've got a good understanding of how it works and how assumptions work, and I've hired consultants and I've led meetings like you folks are doing. And I'll tell you that, like when I went to work for the city of Salinas, the first place we were looking at, they eventually had to close down because they made the assumption that you could get good water there, but Firestone had been putting water into Crazy Horse Dump, which affected all of the Prunedale water systems. When I went to work for San Joaquin County, they assumed the water was okay, but 20 years prior to that, they'd authorized the farmers to use pesticides to control nematodes in the grapes, and 20 years later, we were having to put in filter systems, and all the domestic water, including all the city of Lodi, had to do it as well to get the DBCPs out of the water. So you have to, what I'm asking is, you know how the system works. You've had lots of staff reports where they gave you assumptions which led to project budgets that didn't meet what they said they would. You have to look behind the numbers, you have to look at the assumptions, and you have to use wisdom, common sense, and good judgment. I mean, it would be like Marvell Market. I mean, they sell milk, but if they were to come in and want to put a dairy on their property, you're going to have hay trucks coming in, you're going to have manure to deal with. They're still selling milk, but they've changed their operation. These folks have been there a long time. I understand they have a right to operate. They were there before a lot of the houses, so you have to take that into consideration. But also, you have to consider, you know, are you getting a straight scoop? And what about 20 years from now? Because a lot of assumptions turned out not to be right.
My name is Ann Flock, and I actually live in San Andreas, Sunset area. My interest in this environmental things goes way back. After the cement plant closed, a company, I think it was called Genco, wanted to put in a hazardous toxic plant that they would burn there, which happens to be almost 3 miles from my house. Knowing from the cement plant, which I totally supported, that carries a long distance. We have oak trees that were silver during that time. We had moss growing on our shingle roof because of the cement dust fostered that. It goes longer than the immediate neighborhood. That's why I got interested, I don't know how many years ago. There were several ladies from Arnold, one of which may be here still today, who fought it and organized the people of San Andreas to get the facts and go through the proper local government. We defeated it. We had many huge crowds in the gym. That is my background as far as why I followed environmental issues for a long time. I am not an expert like the doctors or the Environmental Protection Department, but I do follow and try to get my facts straight. I was dismayed when the Planning Commission did not pay any attention, apparently, to Dr. Kaleda's as the county health doctor and the county environmental department report. If you go through the state law, which is CEQA, it says private and public projects have to be mitigated or studied, then if they are any threat to health and safety. We haven't done that, and if we do that, there's also the possibility you can mitigate any possibilities. Okay, so I will stop with that in a minute. I recommend this board goes through the proper state laws, get conditional use permits, and noxious odors came out from the engineering company in their report. The definition of noxious is not very, just one second. It defines noxious as harmful smells akin to harm, physically harmful or destructive. I suggest you follow the local health authorities' recommendation, and I appreciate the time. Oh, and I hate this. Unsigned, didn't have a paid advertisement, probably is not accurate.
Thank you. So just let you know, before we start, Tom, we're going to take a lunch break at 12:15 and then come back to it an hour after the break.
Tom Infacino, Calaveras Planning Coalition. Being a supervisor is not always easy. There are a lot of bad days. There are days when the county staff lets you down. There are days when your constituents let you down. There are even days when you have to survey the damage of a devastating wildfire. Those are bad days. But today does not have to be one of those bad days. Today, you supervisors can tell your county health officer, Dr. Dean Kaleda, yes, we acknowledge your medical training. Yes, we respect your medical advice. Yes, we are going to complete an environmental review of the proposed plant and determine if there are permit conditions we can put in place to protect the health, the safety, and the well-being of the good people of Calaveras County. Today, you supervisors can tell your environmental health director, Jason Baitzer, yes, we acknowledge your expertise. Yes, we value your technical knowledge. Yes, we appreciate your frank analysis. Yes, we understand your recommendation. Yes, we trust you to help oversee a full environmental review of the proposed plant. And yes, We want you to identify permit conditions needed to protect the health, safety, and well-being of the good people of Calaveras County. Today, you supervisors can tell the people of Valley Springs that yes, we care about your health. Yes, we care about your safety. Yes, we care about your well-being. Yes, we care enough about you to complete a broad and thorough and independent environmental review. Yes, we will try to find permit conditions we can place on the plant to protect your health, your safety, and your well-being. And yes, if we cannot protect your health and your safety and well-being, then we will not approve this plant. If that is what you supervisors decide today, then this will not be a bad day. In fact, if that is what you decide today, then this will be a very good day to be a supervisor, and this will be a very good day to be among the very good people of Calaveras County. Thank you, and may God bless.
Good morning, Rosemary Wilson from McCullamy Hill. I actually have a PhD in science from the University of Durham and chemistry in particular. I was surprised that with an asphalt plant being considered that there wouldn't be an environmental review, and I would urge you to get that review in place, and then we can see what we're talking about. I remember when we were when the prison, the jail was going up. I guess being English, I always get prison and jail mixed up, but you know what I mean. And other buildings and developments where there have been environmental reports. I remember there being so much concern, and we had to pay tens of thousands of dollars, there I go again, for elderberries and elderberry mitigation, not to mention the odd frog or toad or two. But when it comes to the potential of people's health being impacted, it seems like you're okay with that, or the people in planning are okay with that. I've worked in various different industries and such, and I can tell you that some of those legal levels in terms of noise, in terms of general exposure to chemicals and such, and MSDSs, your health can be impacted even though it's fine to have a whistling backing pump going 24/7 in a high vacuum analytical lab. You can have headaches and suffer rashes and nausea even though your exposure levels are well within the limits set by government. But it comes to quality of life, something that it seems like a lot of the discussions we've had lately come back to quality of life. And I would strongly urge you to get the necessary reports yourselves as opposed to relying on what other people, albeit highly educated people, have to say and their interpretations. Thank you.
Excuse me just for a minute. Can I break in for a second here? Dr. E?
Yes, may I have the pleasure for just 5 minutes, because my clinic and Dr. Kaleta's clinic are closed, and we could not afford for our patients to be waiting longer. I only need 5 minutes to rebut both scientists from the asphalt company.
Mr. Chair,
all of
we
those
didn't make any exception on the other one. I'd consider that, please.
Because look, we are healers of Calaveras, and all of our patients are waiting in line. So
All right, so
today, I only need 5 minutes.
I will pull the board again.
I would have to agree. We made rules in the beginning.
Okay.
We ruled on this issue once before. I think I'm going to maintain that position.
I'd have to agree. We're corrected on.
So we have to, we set the rules, we're following.
I do have a comment.
Go ahead.
What we could do is, we could not change the rules there, but just our own deciding lunch break at 12:15, because we have a few, how many more public comment left?
No, bunches.
Okay.
Nice try.
I'm sorry, Dr. Heath.
Well, I think just a comment. I will refute with those two scientists academically, professionally, and mathematically. Because I think they did not put enough statistical profile for you to understand p-value and probability in the statistics.
Thank you,
And I
Dr.
will
Heath.
teach them.
Thank you, Doctor.
My name's John Lutz, and I live on Dunn Road, and I'm 3/4 of a mile from the asphalt plant, 3/8 of a mile from the edge of the pit. And I can hear, at the end of the day, the employees up at the courtyard talking when I sit in my patio. So what this is about here, what I have is, I reported this once before, but I didn't have any documentation. At one time, the appellant was talking about the bag house was going to remove fumes, and I use the word fumes, not odor. Odor is what comes off of my fish when I fry it. Fumes contain a lot more. There's 5 pages in this, but there's only 4 topics. And on the first page, if you go down to the bottom, this is from Far Gold. It's one of the biggest producers of bag houses in the United States, and I checked with 3. And down a little bit above the bottom is high efficiency filters stop 99% at half a micron size particles. And so that's the best bag houses you can buy. And if you go to page, the 3rd page in here on airborne particles, it talks about small particles here and what they are, and I just unfortunately just had to put a red line on it through this. And it also talks about how far particles will travel, and I'm not going to go through and read all this, but depending on their size, some particles can stay in the air indefinitely if there's even any movement of the air. So having said that, what I did find would help with this situation, if the plant goes in, I hope it doesn't, is what's called a regenerative thermal oxidizer, and I called it a scrubber. Now that goes on the exhaust of the bag house, and that will remove, now this is not from loading the trucks and out of the trucks, this is just from where the bag house sucks out of the mixing chamber and wherever they have the negative air from the bag house. It will take all of those volatiles and it will turn them into water and carbon dioxide, 99% of them in most cases. It's plant specific. So maybe there's modifications if we get this plant. And then on the last page, it's just a little something that's going on in an asphalt plant up in Fernley, Nevada, where they put one of these in because they were getting sued by the town. And that seemed to mitigate things.
30 seconds.
Boy, that went fast. Also, I'm living in my dream house. I didn't know I was sick until I moved up here. And about a year, I started feeling great. And it was just from the clean air and it being dark at night and the whole environment. And that's about to change on me. And please don't take my house away from me. I get sick from asphalt fumes. It's actually happened to me. And I will not be able to live in that house if the fumes make it there. Small amount over a long period of time ends up to be a lot of fumes. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Bonnie Newman from Double Springs. I want to address toxins and health and environmental damage. Basically, being in denial of something does not mean that that something does not exist. It just means you're in denial. and you're probably a procrastinator, and probably a blamer, and probably a shirker of responsibility. We want you to help us be responsible. We want to help you be responsible by reminding you of what your obligations are to the citizens and the voters and the taxpayers in Calaveras County. A consultant was contracted by CB Asphalt and gave you some information, and I'm assuming that consultant was paid by CB Asphalt. Dr. Estoeste is not paid to be here. We have... I heard a rumor that either CB Asphalt and/or Ford Construction made a substantial contribution to Mr. Kearney's supervisorial run. We need to know if that's true, because it's not reassuring. A CUP, a conditional use permit, and an environmental review would reassure the citizens that you're trying to protect us, you're concerned about our health, our safety, and our well-being. And if we can't look to our leaders to protect us, we're going to need to look for new leaders.
Okay, we have time for one more comment before lunch.
I'll make it brief because you want to break at 12:15. Good afternoon. My name is Gloria Jean Bodemiller. My husband Fred and I live on the corner of Hartvickson and Silver Rapids. And I was born and raised in Silicon Valley, San Jose to be exact. I picked many a prune, cut many a cot, and saw those beautiful trees destroyed by what's happening here in Calaveras County, or what we're seeing happening here. It's just very disheartening. John Muir wrote about San Jose and that area and said it was one of the most fertile valleys that he had seen in Central California. And I hate to see that happening here to Calaveras County. My husband and I moved up here almost 40 years ago. We raised two boys on a ranch off of Pull Station Road, and then it got to be too much for us. We bought a home in Valley Springs, and we love it there. We know the trucks go by, that's not a big deal. As you get older, your ears don't hear as well, so it's not a big deal. But this asphalt plant, please. And I just am so thankful to be here. I'm praying for each and every one of you to make the right decision. And I'm so thankful to be here that we are blessed in America where we can stand up and say what we feel and stand up for our rights. And we, the citizens of Valley Springs, we address you and say, please, get all these permits and do all these things that are necessary to protect us. That's what we elect you for. And if you don't, I'm sorry, you won't get my vote either. And I will tell my friends throughout the county to reconsider voting for you. Thank you.
Okay, so we're going to break for lunch. We'll be back at 1:15.